Thank you once again for being here and being on time for the UniverCity Online Learning Course, semester number 4. We begin as always with Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, which simply means with Allah's signature, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We give all praises to the God, creator, evolver, and sustainer of all systems of knowledge, as it's given in the QUR'AN, Rabbil Alameen, that God is the Rabb, or the creator, the one who evolves the life forms that he has created and then marshals forms on to their destiny, as one who continuously feeds those life forms the information necessary for their growth, for their sustenance, and for them to be able to fulfill their purpose. Thank you once again. I'm going to mute out all of the callers, and you can mute yourselves into the conversation if necessary. If you have a question or a quick comment, give me just one moment.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Very good. All right. So we are officially ready on this Tuesday night, November 20th, 2018. I welcome you once again to the UniverCity Online Learning Course, semester number 4. And in case you haven't been introduced to me, I am your instructor for tonight, Benjamin Bilal. Consider myself to be an international instructor because we have some folks outside of the continental United States who are joining us tonight and join us every week. And due to the blessings of internet, we're able to capture audiences from anywhere on planet Earth that has internet service. So if you happen to have friends or relatives or people that you've met and have numbers to, feel free during the times when this course is open to the public to send them an invite, the exact same one that you received. We're going to begin today by continuing a subject that I've been bringing before you as study tools. Now, this is going to be part 3 of that endeavor, but if you missed part 1 and part 2, don't worry about it. There will be plenty of information in tonight's discourse so that you will not feel as though you missed anything. In fact, what you're going to get tonight is actually going to be enough to hold you. There used to be a commercial that said, "A little dab will do you." Well, this is going to be your dab for the night. You'll probably purposely not ask me about parts 1 and part 2 after you receive what Allah has in store for you tonight from the pen of Instructor Benjamin Bilal. So any word or concept that you do not understand, it automatically becomes your homework. So please consult Sheikh Google. So that's the one Sheikh that I do consult, Sheikh Google, www. There's a trick in that also, but we won't go into it. Oh man, the world and its language is full of tricks. And we're here to unravel some of those. And at the same time, grow into a deeper understanding of what God has presented to that same world through the Qur'an. And the understanding, the absolute understanding that comes with a correct perception of what God has revealed. Today, we're dealing with the topic Eden, the word DEEN, D-E-E-N, and the GAR-DEN, G-A-R-D-E-N. So if you're taking notes, make note of that. The 3 major sources of reference material that I use are from the 3 that you're seeing on the screen now. And again, for the purposes of people who are listening by telephone, those 3 are the online etymology dictionary. So you'll just Google that and the website will come up. Number 2, the Lane's Free Lexicon. You Google that, and the website will come up. For those who need to know how to navigate that, I would ask that you email me or give me a call, and I will, as I have done for many others, literally walk you through it, walk you through how to find or determine the Arabic root letters and how to be able to pull together the necessary information for your study. The third is the Dictionary of the Holy Quran. Now, this somewhat overlaps with the Lane's Free Lexicon. However, the Dictionary of the Holy Quran has a decided advantage in that it's actually a combination of the best Arabic dictionaries and lexicons available. The Dictionary of the Holy Quran, which was produced by Abdul Manan Omar, is the best, again, when it comes to the combination of the best dictionaries and etc. on the Arabic English connection. So you also want to have that in your stockpile, if you will. Now, moving on to the subject, we want to talk first about the 4 rivers of Eden. All of us have heard of Eden. I'm going to ask you not to draw on the screen as I speak. Maybe you're trying to draw 4 rivers. I don't know.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm still happy to know that I'm allowing people to do that. We're going to use that in the very near future. That's why I haven't disabled the function. But it's okay because you make my point. Those are actually 4 lines representing our 4 rivers. So, Baina, you always, maybe it's the psychic in you. I don't know. But it's not even in the way of the writing. That's a wonderful thing. So the 4 rivers of Eden represent the outward expression of what came to be known in the Quran as DEEN. So what Instructor Benjamin Bilal is attempting to do tonight, as he does every time we get together, is show you definite correlations between previous scripture and the scripture that has been revealed for all time, for all people, called Al-Qur'an. So if I go back and forth between the Bible and the Quran, it's for those purposes, making sure that we draw a direct correlation so that if there are any mistakes, if there are any omissions, if there are any unnecessary additions even to what previous scripture has brought before us, it can all be sent through the checkpoint of Quranic logic. So keep that in mind. Now, you can see the word den in Eden. And as I always tell you, if there are similar consonants or the same consonants, there's going to be similar or same meaning in the word that's being displayed. That's a very, very easy way of determining relationships in the meanings or between the meanings of words. Just follow the bouncing ball of what consonants are being used. And in this case, we're talking about the consonants D and N as letters. D and N. We're not dealing with the vowels, so don't think about A, E, I, O, or U in this case. Think about the consonants. And again, they are D and N being used in the word Eden and also in the Arabic word DEEN. Now you might say, well, Eden is a different language than Arabic. So how can it have the same meaning, Buster? If Arabic is from Arabia, Eden is from Hebrew or whatever, you know. Well, first of all, Hebrew and Arabic are sister languages. That's the first thing. But even if they weren't, even if the word Eden was so-called purely English, it wouldn't matter as long as the consonants are the same or similar. They're going to have a related meaning. That's what my system of Nunetics has discovered, and that's what I've been teaching now to some very curious and interested people across the United States and even outside of the United States. And I'm very thankful to the people who have been showing me righteous support for what it is I'm doing. And that's beginning with Imam Salim Mu'min of the Mali Institute, who many years ago, better than 10 years ago actually, learned about my method that I now call nunetics and consonantal connections. And he had sincere praises for it back then. And he speaks about it very, very often in his weekly Arabic sessions. And he has also students from across the country. Now, when we look at the names of these 4 rivers as they're given in the Bible, I'm going to give you their names, and you can find this in the book of Genesis, but I'm also going to give you what the Hebrew scholars say are the meanings. These are the Hebrew as well as the Greek scholars who do biblical analysis, linguistic analysis. These are the 4 names, but these are the meanings that they say these words mean or have. The first river is Pishon, and it means increase. The second river is Gihon, and it means bursting forth. You've heard the slang term for a man having cojones. Well, that should already let you know where that's going, right? Bursting forth, right? Gihon. The third river is called Tigris, and it means rapid. And the fourth and last river is called Euphrates, and it means fruitfulness. Now, we may be reading or have been reading these words in the Bible as Christians, more than likely, and hearing this for all of the lifetime that we've been going to church or reading the Bible or having it explained to us by a pastor or reverend or etc. And we have never come across the meanings of the actual words. And because we have not come across the meanings of the actual words, we have been left to think that these are literal rivers that are running across various stretches of the earth, primarily in the Middle Eastern region of the world. And I'm here to tell you, as many biblical scholars will now tell you, that that is not the case. That these are not references to physical rivers. Now, let me tell you first and foremost how we know that to be true. Because the Bible says, before introducing these 4 rivers, that 4 rivers ran and became heads. They ran separately and then they became heads. And there's no rivers on earth that run separately and then come together at a particular point to become one water. That just does not happen. So one Hebrew scholar, I believe his name was Maimonides, I'm believing. I could be wrong about the name, but nevertheless, I'm not wrong about what it is he said. He said, when you're reading scripture, if you come across anything that does not make sense to the intellect, he said, stop there. God is trying to teach you something. So he didn't say dismiss it because it doesn't make sense or it doesn't agree with rational logic as we know it or science as we've studied it. He said, stop. God actually put an intentional impediment there so that the mind would say, this is not regular. There must be a buried treasure here. And that's how every one of us as students, not only of scripture, but particularly of scripture, should also approach study. Especially in the Quran. If I'm talking to Muslims right now, when you read the Quran, there are things that do not necessarily sync up with what you know to be science or with what you even know to be common sense. Common sense says that, listen, I would pay a person right now to prove to me that they've had a conversation with an ant in the backyard or the front yard. But in the Quran, there's a major prophet having a conversation with an ant and with a hoopoe bird. And in the Bible, there are people talking to snakes. So now if you want to go on believing that literally, that's your business. But what I'm here to say to you is that if you're attempting to be a good student of Scripture, that you should just take that as a question mark, pause there and come back to that and ask God to help you determine what that actually means, for you to find the correct sources and resources to explain to you what that means as a symbol of something, or as an allegory related to some grander and greater truth. That's how we have to become as thinkers. That's how we have to become as people interested in the broader field of religious understanding. Now, those four particular rivers in the meanings of their names are actually representative of what science calls the four kingdoms. And we have the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and the one that I hope most of us belong to. That's the human kingdom. Now, if you compare each of these four with the four above, based on the names of the rivers, you'll see the connection. Pishon means increase. Well, minerals are the most incremental and increasing substance that we find in the universe. Mineral, rock, solid form, matter, etc. If you match Gihon, the second one, the idea of something bursting forth, then that corresponds exactly with what plants do when they surface from beneath the soil to reach daylight. They actually literally burst forth from beneath the earth, beneath the soil, to brandish themselves above the soil. When you match the third one, the tigress, with the idea of being rapid, well, plants cannot be considered to be moving in terms of being rapid. Plants move, they grow up, but they're actually stuck in their particular environment. So they are not indicative of things that move with rapidity. But animals certainly are. You've seen the deer in the yard or in the country, in the outback or whatever. You see these animals. You see the rabbit romping and all of these other animal forms of life taking on what they call animation. See, animate and animation, the ability to move and move quickly, is a feature of the animal. You can hear it in the connection between the words themselves. Animate, animal. Okay, and the last one, Euphrates, which means fruitfulness, is a reference to the human being. Now, God said to the human being in the Bible to be fruitful and multiply. Now, we might take that to mean have babies all over the place. I know some brothers thought that's what it meant. I'll just keep on reproducing your likeness. That's what God wants. No, if that's what God wants, he would have stopped at the Tigris River. He would have stopped at the animal form of existence, because animals know as well as we do, or maybe even better than we do, how to reproduce sexually, how to reproduce biologically. So the fruitfulness that is being referred to in this instance is not the fruitfulness of sexual profundity or sexual reproduction. No, that's a part of it, but that's not it. The true fruitfulness that human beings have inherited, that human beings have been created with by God, is the fruitfulness related to the human intellect. The ability of your mind to produce ideas, inventions. That's the Euphrates. That's the great trait of fruitfulness that the human being has been endowed with. The ability to reproduce your ideas, if your ideas are in fact good for the growth and development of other living beings. See? You don't choose to eat those fruits that you know are poisonous or injurious to human life or to animal life. You don't eat those. You don't go around looking for poison ivy to boil and put that on the Thanksgiving dinner plate. No, you stay away from that and you go for those that have proven scientifically sound in their proof that they are contributing to the betterment or to the wholeness of life. So it's the same thing with ideas, just in the way that we eat from the plate of physical foods, we also eat from the plate of mental foods. We call them ideas, we call them information, we call them knowledge. All of that represents food for what they call thought, food for thought. But that food, we should seek for that food to be just as pure, see, just as clean, just as wholesome and healthy for you as the food that we're picking out of the garden or out of the supermarket, right? You go to the vegetable section of the supermarket, and sometimes they're still spraying the vegetables, right? They got these sprays, they're spraying the vegetables because they know that spraying the vegetables and you seeing that the vegetables are being cleaned or being kept pure, they know that appeals to the fitra in you. They know that it appeals to the psychology that Allah has clocked into your genetics. Your genes know I'm supposed to be clean. I'm supposed to eat clean. I'm supposed to do my best to stay clean. If I have a job, some employment that requires that I get dirty, boy, I can't wait to get off and get home. You don't come home and start laying across the couch and picking up the children. No, first thing you do, take off those dirty clothes, take a bath, take a shower, get clean again, because that's clocked into your fitrah. And by fitrah, we mean the natural disposition that God put in you to want certain things without even having to have knowledge of why you want those certain things. A man wants a woman, but he doesn't have to have a professor explain that to him. A woman seeks a man, she doesn't have to have a teacher, a high school teacher explain to her the physics of why you should want. Now, the way the world has been trending, there might be a future need for us to put teachers in the classroom who have to explain to the children all over again why the boy needs a girl and why the girl needs a boy, and etc., because they are doing such a hatchet job on the human fitrah that it may take some extreme measures to bend it back in the correct direction. But that's not a topic for tonight. I just want to throw that in. All right. The point here is that these four rivers exist in what is called the fitrah, the world of natural creation, the world of patterned development that God has created everywhere you look. It doesn't matter what direction you looked in, north, east, south, west, you're going to find one or more of these kingdoms staring at you. The mineral life, the plant life, the animal life, and of course, the human life. Let's move on. In the Bible, Eden is first called Gan-Eden. Gan, G-A-N, is the Hebrew word for what we call a garden, G-A-R-D-E-N, and is the equivalent of the Quranic Arabic word Jannah. Jannah. So those of you who are already familiar with how to interchange consonants based on my method of numetics and consonantal connections, you know that the English letter G is interchangeable with the Arabic letter J, and you can hear it even in the pronunciation. Arabic does not have a hard G, as does the Hebrew language. It doesn't have a G sound like gorilla, but it has the J sound like George. So you can spell gorilla with a G, hard G, or you can spell George and pronounce it with the soft G sound, which again is the equivalent of the J sound in English and in Arabic. So the G is a J. G-A-N, Gan, is the equivalent of J-A-N, Jan. And in this case, we're talking about the Quranic Arabic word Jannah, which all Muslims, I hope, are familiar with. And it literally means garden. Sometimes we say heaven, but that's not a correct interpretation of the word Jannah. Jannah simply means garden, and it represents a garden that is so lush with vegetation that many things become hidden within its environment. So whenever you see Jannah, and even when you see the word jinn, you can hear the comparison, right? Jannah, jinn. But we don't think about jinn and Jannah in the same sentence. Jinn are those little fiery creatures going around making all of the mischief. And Jannah is the place that we hope to leave this physical life and end up in as a paradise for us, a reward from our Lord, as the Quran says. So what is the connection between these two words that have similar sound, similar consonants, the J sound and the N sound? Jannah, jinn. The corresponding meaning is that they both represent something hidden. The Jannah can hide because, again, of its lush environment, foliage, trees, plants, fruits, etc. And the jinn are also hidden from view. You may feel the effects of jinn influence, but you can't just point to a person and say, aha, look at the fire in his eyes. He's got to be a jinn. Or look at the sensuality in that woman. Look at how she dances. She must be a jinn. No, she could very well be a human who is overly influenced by hidden things. DEEN, D-E-E-N, sometimes you'll see it spelled D-Y-N, same word. DEEN is to be expressed in 4 fundamental areas. Now, when you compare the word DEEN to Eden, the E, that letter in Eden, means to go out. See, E always means to go out. In fact, if you look at it, for those of you who have the advantage of the webinar, if you look at this letter E, let's just enlarge it here. You can see that in the construction of the English letter E, you see a straight line going up and down as a back. And then you see 3 lines coming out from that spine, if you will. 3 lines, one on the top, one in the middle, one on the bottom. So they are protruding outward. So in the construction of the physical letter itself is a sign of what the actual letter is expressing. And it is expressing the idea of expressing, of something exiting. You see that word exit? Yeah. So E means to leave, to go out, to go abroad. All right. So Eden means that which goes out of the den, that which leaves the den. And in this case, that den we're discussing is compatible with what Al-Quran calls the deen. And it doesn't mean to leave the deen. It represents a deen that expresses itself in the world, in the environment. That's what we're about to discuss now. Deen is to be expressed in these 4 fundamental areas. They are trade, sometimes heard to be economics. I like to go back to the beginning, though. Before we had a system of economics, we had a bartering system. I'm talking about all over planet Earth before this invention, this false invention, actually, of what we now call money, the monetary system. We used to trade things that we believed to be of equal value or worth. So trade was the first economic system. And the way the economy is going as we speak, we may have to go back to this age-old concept of trade. I believe Imam W.D. Muhammad was heading there when he introduced AMCOP as basically what he presented to us as a bartering system, the development of what would have become a truly sophisticated bartering system, where money would have been secondary in terms of our interest and in terms of our usage. And again, we may have to go back to that. Don't count it out. So trade is essential as one of the 4 fundamental areas of social involvement. Government is essential as another aspect of expression in the social environment. When we say government, we're not always talking about president, vice president, Congress, Republican, Democrat. All of that stuff came later. All of it came later. When Imam W.D. Muhammad came into office in 1975, he spoke of something called the self-government. He called it self-government in the New World. Some of you remember that. It was on the cover of the then Muhammad Speaks newspaper, self-government in the New World. So self-government is actually the first government. Self-government is necessary for the proper socialization of human beings and human affairs. If you don't have the discipline to govern yourself, beginning at home, beginning in the family life, the family actually represents the first system, organized the system of government. And the idea that grows out of that original system is what is being perpetrated in the world today as government over the people, not of the people. We have government over the people. And if you look at this word, the government, you can see what it has devolved to become. Govern means rule, and then they attach the word ment to it, which means mental. So this means rule over the mental. People who are ruling your mentality. Now, if you have self-government, it means that you have taken it upon yourself as a responsibility to rule your own mind. Now, if you don't take that as a responsibility, then you leave it as a default for other people to step in and become the rulers of your mind for you. That's what you find in the world today on the most part. People who are actually agreeing to let outside and sometimes antagonistic forces govern their lives, feed them information that is actually responsible for destroying their vital life. So this particular government begins with you. It begins at home. It begins in the family life and structure, government. Next, we have education. And education is another very vital aspect of the social construct. And again, that begins at home. That begins at home. If all of the schools shut down tomorrow, what's a fella to do when it comes to educating his children, her children? What are we supposed to do? Just wait until the government opens back up schools for us so that they can teach us all over again exactly what they want us to know and nothing more? And everything that they want us to know is for purposes of continuing the kind of society and the kind of animal production of goods and services that are intent on making the political and the economic forces beneficial. But the common person, in terms of your true human growth and development as an internal person, as a thinker, as a person who's trying to develop emotionally, so that we don't slip backwards on the scale of evolution when it comes to emotional development or when it comes to intellectual development. See, if we're not thinking on the level of what is governing the inside of us, then the education that we seek is going to only be in support of those people who have set up political and economic motives for governing and educating us. This education we're speaking about in these 4 layers or these 4 avenues of social engagement or involvement, we're talking about them as fitra, rivers. They're not supposed to become stagnant and polluted as we witness them in the world today. Economics is polluted, it's stagnant. The government is at a standstill, it's stagnant. Education, they don't know what to do with educating the children, so they'll bring the drag queens in now to teach your grade schoolers. They have no clue what they're doing. And definitely when you turn on YouTube or turn on the television set or turn on the internet and look at what's going on in the general culture, you know for sure that human life has become retarded. And excuse me for using a politically incorrect term, but I mean no castigation whatsoever against the clinically retarded. I'm using the term retarded in reference to how vegetation grows or does not grow, becomes stagnant, becomes devoid of moisture, devoid of the necessary nutrients to keep those plants growing and productive. When you deny the plant like that, the plants become, technically speaking, what they call retarded vegetation, retarded vegetation. That's the retardation I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the clinically retarded. Those people are much more advanced in their human essence than most people who call themselves sane. And I've been in groups of children and adults, even older people, seniors who are classified clinically retarded. In fact, I have a brother in my family, an older brother who's classified as clinically retarded. I've lived with that all my life. I know the respect that they're due. And I know that only Allah can judge the human soul, because my brother's soul, I'm telling you, he might not know what I know, but he knows a lot of things that I have yet to find out. A very, very advanced soul in the people that we're calling stupid and, all of these other negative words that we call people who seem to not be as developed as we are. We're going to be in for a big surprise in the judgment when Allah brings these people in front of you to say, he gets in front of the line ahead of you, if you're on the line at all. So culture is the last avenue of social expression that we need to keep purified. We need it to be reestablished so that it serves the interest of the true human in society. And I put beside each one of these four the corresponding fitra-based element. Now, why am I doing this? Because if you're able to trace your social logic back to something that God created as a natural property in the world, then you have already in front of you in the creation, in the study of creation, as the Quran says we should do, right? You have working before you at all times without the aid necessarily of the scholar. They don't have to point these things out to you. Children study the rain. Children study the blowing of the leaves on the ground and picking them off the tree and the insects. And children are quick to study these things in the fitra. The fitra is, in fact, the human being's primary teacher. Allah tells us very clearly in the Quran that it is Allah who is teaching all of us. That's what Allah says in the Quran. It is Allah who is teaching all of you. Yeah, is he in the classroom at the blackboard or the whiteboard or the green board? No. The classroom that we're talking about now and the blackboard that he writes across is the universe. All right. So these four basic elements are connected to those four areas of social involvement. Trade is under the symbol water. All you have to do is study how to treat water and how water should treat you, and you already have the essence of how trade should operate in the social life. Yeah, you put something on the water, if it's moving water, it's going to move away from you and it's going to serve the interest of people far, far, far away from you. If you cause water to become stagnant, if you put filth into it, it's going to be the only source of water you have available to you. And now you have to eat from the filth that you have created. See, that's all economics. That's why economics is given to you in water terms. Let me liquefy my assets, right? You even call it currency. Current, that's from the water. You put your money in the bank. That's from the river bank. Every major term that is used in economics is from a water concept. They understood that a long time ago, that trade or commerce, merchant, mermaid, any word that has mer and mar, like marine, it has to do with that which is connected to water. And that includes words in the Quran. I told you it doesn't matter what language. If the letters correspond, you're going to have corresponding logic. So when you read about folks in the Quran, I hate to call them folks, but figures, characters, if you will, in the Quran, such as Maryam, all right? You know that it's going to have something to do with a water concept or a water quality. Now, if you've been listening to Imam W.D. Muhammad, you know that water represents also the emotional life. So now we're talking about the area of psychology. See, there are four psychological connections to these same four terms that are given here as social and also as fitra-based elements, four elements. We're not going to go all into the psychology, but suffice it to say that Maryam means water also, but it means water as it's expressed in two primary avenues. That is as an emotional concept, and all Marys in scripture, not just Maryam, the mother of Jesus in the Quran, even in the Bible, the mother of Jesus in the Bible, Mary, there are three major Marys in the Bible, and all of them have to do with water. Mary Magdalene is said to have washed the feet of Jesus with her hair and her tears. Man, you can't get any more emotional than that. In the Quran, Maryam went into a swoon, went into a faint behind the emotional pressure that she found herself on, being pregnant in the desert with this baby to be that nobody around her would believe was conceived in the manner that she suggested. They castigated her. They called her all kinds of names that we can't repeat on tonight's teleconference. But suffice it to say, she was emotionally done. In fact, she says in the Quran, would I have been a thing unthought of? Can you imagine being under that kind of emotional pressure that you actually are making a prayer to God that not only that he lets you die. See, you got to read the Quran correctly. That's what she's saying. I wish not only God that you would let me die right now from the pressure I'm under. I'm actually wishing that I would have never even been conceived, that I had been a thing done away with and unheard of. Now, it's enough to want to die, but to want to have not even been born, that's emotional pressure. You know why that's in the Quran? As help for the psychologists and the psychiatrists who want to be fitra-based and understand psychology as God recognizes it and teaches it. Not as Sigmund Freud and these other people have established psychology. Some of those people were crazier. They were nutty as a fruitcake, some of them. Many of them, guessing their best into human nature or wanting to manipulate human nature so that it would reflect their scheme. Allah is bringing it all back to the fitra. So Maryam, water, and everything that's connected to it, emotionalism, and also the moral nature, the nature that wants to be clean, the nature that wants to remain pure, innocent. She's also indicative of that, and that's also the water quality. Government, as you know, represents a type of mountain that people climb where you have to have certain leaders that have the final say, the final word over certain decisions. Well, that's what a mountain is like, and mountains have been symbolic of government. And as you know, the higher a mountain you climb, the less air, the less oxygen you have access to. So those things that are necessary for sustaining your comfort as a human being, a comfortable life. The air, again, becomes constricted the higher you go because of the less and less oxygen that you run into or run out of. And it's the same thing with government. It's a sign from God that don't allow yourself, don't allow your status to become too high, Pharaoh, Fir'aun. You'll choke out your own life. You'll choke out the life of your true intellect. So become government. Allah says that one day he's going to level the mountains. See, it's happening already. Meaning people are coming into positions of leadership, but it's a shared, as Imam Muhammad called it, it's a shared freedom space. See, that's the leveling of the mountain. No big I's, no little U's, like they used to say in the old nation of Islam. A level playing field. That's how government should be. And there was once upon a time in history, about 7,000 to 8,000 years ago in the world, especially in the area of what is now called Egypt, where the people were not ruled by this kind of male-dominated energy, let's call it. The world was actually ruled at that time by a feminine principled energy, where women represented the bulk of the leadership in that day and time. But it was not a centralized leadership. It was a local and a community-based and a cultural-based leadership that people had at the time. But the women represented the go-to people for the wisdom necessary to keep that social order intact. It wasn't a man dictating. The man was on standby, ready to do those things, to institute those things, to inculcate those rules and regulations that women had agreed were good for the society. And believe it or not, society is leaning, slowly but surely, leaning back in the direction of the reinstitution of the feminine principle. But because there's not a solid logic behind that urge, in other words, because there's not revelation, there's not the following of God's method for returning us to the fitrah, it's happening in a very sloppy way. It's happening in a way that's beginning to manifest an abundance of homosexuality and transgenderism. See, that's not all the machinations and schemes of Shaitan that's doing that. It's a fitrah-based rejection of the over-masculinization of society, the overemphasis on the man, to the point where we began to treat man as though man was God. Well, the fitrah is rebelling against that, and sometimes it has to bend all the way into the left side, or on the left side of the equation, before it can then bounce back, as Dr. Martin Luther King said about the moral arc of justice, right? It has to come back to an equilibrium. So we're in the middle of that struggle right now. And our task is to stay in touch and in tune with Quranic guidance so that we don't have to experience the fires of either extreme. You're burnt up on one side, and then you have to go into the other side and you drown in the other extreme. We don't want to drown, and we don't want to burn. We don't want to be frozen. We don't want to be singed. We want to be upright in what's called Hanifa position. Let's continue. So education is fire because it lights the world, plain and clear. And culture is the land because land needs to be cultivated. So you can make changes or adjustments or amendments in the cultural life, whether we're talking about what Hollywood has produced or whether we're talking about what we should be accepting as so-called entertainment. What we need to do is study what pollutes the land or what is responsible for the proper production in land, in soil. What are the proper needs? What are the methods for growing fitrah-based products out of the land? And then take that knowledge, take that logic, and begin to build a cultural life based on the same platform or based on the same paradigms and patterns. I could say goodnight to all of you right now, and you've had enough. That would have been enough. Just what I've said so far. But we won't do that. You know me better than that. Now, DEEN represents the essential 4 areas of human activity, as we've discussed, which provide stimuli to the brain. See, DEEN is not just you talking about Day of Judgment, you know, Yawm al-Deen, or the Day of Debt, DEBT, and you think that's all there is to DEEN? No. DEEN, I repeat, represents the essential 4 areas of human activity which provide stimuli to the brain for purposes of establishing a platform for correct judgment. You've heard that DEEN means judgment. Now you know why. As Muslims, we have to study the fitra connections in all knowledge and logic, all of it. All of the terms that have been brought before us as Muslims, we have to become Muslim thinkers. That's what the dhikr is. You have to discipline your intellect to the point where it begins to bring you back meanings when you ask it to. One of our famous scientists, African-American scientist, George Washington Carver, they asked him, they said, well, how did you come up with all of these answers and all of these remedies for diseases and sickness and all of these vitamins and all of the, man came back with a few hundred inventions that he got just from studying the plant life, and most of it was studied without the advantages of a laboratory. Most of it was just what he could determine from looking at a plant, taking it into his little makeshift laboratory, putting it under whatever he could put it under as an ex-slave, a person coming up out of slavery with whatever he had to work with until they began to give him better exposure and better equipment, etc. That man was out there just experiencing the fitra. And he said, I was able to come up with all of these inventions because I went out every morning at 4 o'clock and I asked the plants, what are you good for? And he said the plants spoke back. That's fitra-based communication. And guess what? If he could do it, it means you could do it, because he was just a human being like you. He didn't have anything special going for him except his discipline and his concentration to a task. If you, and maybe you 60, 70, maybe you're not into that, but if you would teach your 17-year-old grandchild, your 30-year-old daughter or son, to begin to give their kind of attention to detail in the fitra before they give that attention to detail to the soap opera or to the movie screen or to the music, you'd have people who would surpass George Washington Carver to the 10th power right now on earth. And we're beginning to develop children like that. I don't know if you see them popping up, but they are popping up. Graduating from 6th grade and being accepted directly into Harvard. African-American, Bilalian. All right? Yeah, because the tendency is in the fitra, it's in our nature, it's in our nafs. That tendency to grow like a plant is in us. And if you put it in the right environment and make sure that the destructive weeds and the poisons don't get to it, then you have the prescription for success. So if you're not giving attention to all 4 of this combination foundation that I'm telling you represents true DEEN as the Quran presents it. If you're not giving if you're just giving your attention to education, but you don't pay any attention to what's going on governmentally, beginning in the government of your home. See? If you're just paying attention to economics and money making, but you don't care anything about the retardation taking place in the culture, then you're not practicing DEEN proper. You have to be giving it not equal attention necessarily, because we're going to all have our specifications and our interests. But you have to at least be paying attention enough to say, I've covered that ground and I'm monitoring it. I'm monitoring the economics. I'm monitoring the academics. I'm monitoring the government, political interests, right? And I'm monitoring the cultural landscape. If you can just say that you have your eye on it, that you're following it in the news, that you're asking intelligent questions, that you're participating, even if it is peripherally through some other person in your family who has that interest as a foundational interest. Then we are covering at least the community, if not one person. The community is making sure that in the masjid or in the church, there are people involved in all four of those significant areas. What Imam Muhammad used to call the four birds. Same concept. You have to become interested if you intend on establishing what the Quran calls DEEN. Because the DEEN, as I'm saying here, can also be described as our social foundation. Our social foundation. Your DEEN should resemble a GAR-DEN or a GAR-DEN. And a garden, that word is a code word for guarded den or guarded DEEN. Guarded means enclosed. Look that word up in the etymology dictionary, garden. It'll tell you that it represents an enclosure. Enclosed means it's secure. The Quranic equivalent is when Allah mentions Baladil Amin. Check out the surah called At-Teen. Watini wa Zaytun wa Turis Sinin wa Hada Baladil Amin. And this town made safe or secure. So Baladil Amin means a city that is surrounded by security. This word Amin in Baladil Amin is from the Kemetic or the ancient Egyptian word Amen. The Christians have pronounced it as Aben, but it's from the ancient Egyptian name Amen, and it means hidden from view. Hidden from view. And even if you go into the dynamics of Imam Muhammad's explanation of the word man as meaning mind, and you understand from studying language in the depths that I have taken it to know that this A means not. It negates what comes after it. So if man means mind, men being the plural word for man, then a man or Ammon means not mind. What do you use your mind for? Perception. So what is a man? It means that which is not being perceived. Hence, hidden from view. I thank Allah how he makes it simple coming off of my tongue. These are concepts that are very, very, very difficult. First of all, difficult to find, to track down, not to mention the difficulty involved in making the necessary connections for people who don't know this at all, such as most of the people listening to me right now. But I'm giving it to you in a way where you can take it back to the scholar and confound the scholar, because a lot of what I'm giving you is information that they have not been privy to. Trust me when I tell you that. And if they are sincere, they will appreciate you when you bring it to them. Don't bring it to them if you're in a class, a college course or something, and you're waiting to get a grade. And don't show those people, those scholars, those professors, what you know. It will intimidate them. It will intimidate them. They will not like you, and they may fail you for even introducing something that they themselves cannot verify or qualify. But if you just know a professor, you know, Cousin Pookie went and got his degree and he's a professor now, go tell Cousin Pookie. Share it with him or her.
She got passive, she got defensive. That's something she's been working on with Coach Derek Cagle. Continue to be aggressive.
Someone trying to say something, or is someone just bleeding through?
So far in this tournament to get her way into
All right, let me deal with that. Give me just one moment.
Something early in her career she was very defensive about.
That happens every now and then. No harm, no foul. Here we go. All right, moving along. We got a bunch of people on the line tonight. That's beautiful. And I'm going to try to keep this within the time frame. So again, remember that the Quran is here also to explain past knowledge from past scriptures that has become confused, garbled, jarbled, whatever the word is, misrepresented, sometimes intentionally, and hidden. The jewels of it have been hidden from the masses of common people. The Quran comes in to put it in a language that sincere leaders and teachers can grasp in a way that they will be able to explain, if their hearts are right, they'll be able to explain it to the masses of people who have been denied and deprived of that logic. So we're talking about Amun, meaning hidden from view. Baladil Amin, as it's given in the Quran, representing a city that is hidden from view. See, that's what a city surrounded by security means. Everything within that city is hidden and protected from any who would want to vandalize or steal from it. See, you have to understand the depths of Quranic language. There are many words that Allah could have used for town or for city. There are at least 5 words in the Quran for a town, for people living together socially. But he chose the word balad. Balad doesn't just mean city, it means fortified. So a city that is literally fortified with walls that you either have to scale if you have enough strength, or you have to be patient enough to dig under or beneath to get in. Both of those situations require a security team that is asleep or absent for you to even get over the wall without getting shot or pulled down or dogs barking at you, and definitely for you to stand there with a toothpick and start digging in the dirt, trying to dig a hole big enough for your big head to get under and through. I'm not talking to any of you, of course. But that's what we mean. Balad means a fortified city, a fortified town. All right? Allah is wonderful with the way he chooses precise words for precise meanings. Now, look at this correlation. When your den, meaning deen, is left unguarded, and at the same time, think about your garden that's left unmanaged, underprotected from the passing dogs and what they like to do in the garden. When your den or deen is left unguarded, it becomes susceptible to wild animals and wilder humans who might use it to hatch their eggs, meaning their plots, and secure their futures. See, if somebody's able to hatch their eggs or plant their seeds in your garden, unbeknownst to you, then they're growing the vegetation or the plant life and the future provisions for themselves that actually belong to you. That whole story is given in another dimension in the Bible, and it's also given in other words in the Quran. You know, when we talk about plots, we talk about plots being hatched, because plots are very much like eggs. And all it takes is a slight tap on the plot for it to just explode and all of the gooey stuff comes out of it. See, if you tap on the head of the faithful, those who believe in God in the last day, they don't just crumble and explode and get all gooey like the people who are planning and scheming against human life do. The primary garden, this is a very important statement. The primary garden being addressed by God in the Quran is the garden of your human intellect. Now, here's where the value of Imam Muhammad's tafsir, or his explanations, come into focus. That garden is not talking about a physical garden that existed in some remote part of Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago. It's not talking about a physical, literal garden. It's talking about the more important garden that exists every day and is being born into the world This garden is being produced every time a baby is born and gets access to the environment that will then begin helping him or her to develop their intellect. The seeds that are going into the intellect are ideas. So those ideas need to be properly nurtured, needs to have the proper nutrients, needs to have the proper surroundings, and needs to have the proper protection so that the wildlife doesn't dig up the seed, so that it's not discarded, so that the proper watering of the seed happens, the proper access to sunlight, the proper access to oxygen, and all of the other things that it takes for plant life to get its start. That's the garden. The intellect is the garden. When you read about that garden in the Bible, it's talking about the intellect, but it's even clearer in the Quran. Can people know what you're thinking if you don't tell them? The answer is no. You have to tell people, unless you can be read so easily that I see on your face what you. No, most people, you can't just read. They have to tell you what's on. You might know they're upset, but you won't know about what until they tell you, because the intellect is hidden. You see the connection? The garden is hidden. The intellect is hidden. You have to give people access to your garden. The human intellect needs cultivating. God says that a goodly word, meaning language, is a goodly or as a goodly tree. Let's move on. A goodly word is as a goodly tree. The Quran says that God created man from what's called DEEN, transliterated into English as T-E-E-N. God created the human being min teen, from teen. And teen means shapeable clay. Keep that in mind. The Bible says that man was created from what's called Adamah. Adamah. And you can see the word Adam in Adamah. And Adamah is a Hebrew word that means softened ground. So it's very similar to teen. That's what the clay of the earth, the ground, the clay. Teen and Adamah are essentially the same concept because it has to be softened. It says that a man was not there to till the soil until God caused a rain to fall down. This is the Bible I'm giving you. God caused a mist to water the earth, and then he took from the ground, from the Adamah, that softened the ground. So this man of God is not being made from that hard stuff. It's not being made from the concrete. See, so if you're a concrete leader, if you're a concrete person, if you're a concrete human who's interested in nothing but material, see, that's the Cain, C-A-I-N mentality. Interested in just being a tiller of the ground, you know, being close to the ground, close to the money, close to the materialism. If that's you, then you're not God's choice. God's choice was Abel. We're still talking the Bible. God's choice was the keeper of the sheep, the herdsman. You heard? That's God's choice. The one who was in charge of what they called the animal life, those who produced new life by way of the womb. I'm giving you the Bible's language. So the womb, meaning animal life, mammal life, has a precedence over things that are simply connected by material circumstances. Because all of the life that is produced from mammals, and that includes the human mammal, are life forms that are born out of the wombs of their mothers and therefore connected emotionally to a mothering source and are immediately brought into close proximity after being born, brought back into close proximity with their mother's loving arms. As opposed to being in her belly, they are now connected to mother's loving arms, and that reinforces the emotional closeness that life form as a mammal is able to receive and have increased for them, as opposed to creatures like the reptiles that are simply born out of cold eggs. As cold-blooded creatures, mama might not even be anywhere in the vicinity, and it has to make it for itself. It has to make it on its own. Doing what? Crawling around the hard material earth, looking even for water to sustain itself. That's Cain. So don't be a reptile, at least be a mammal. You always have the chance for evolution if you come into life as a mammal. All right. So look at this very carefully. Teen with the TN and Adama with the DM. D and T, as most of you know, are interchangeable. They're called dentals. D and T. As consonants, they are interchangeable, and therefore the words teen or teen, heavy T, and Adama are essentially the same word. Now, do you see how we can do this comparative analysis of both the Bible and the Quran? Not to mention the Quran against the Quran itself, how you compare words and the logic contained in those words. You have to understand the value of these individual consonants and what each of these letters actually mean. That's what my book, Nunetics, is giving you. That's what my English book, The N-Word, an understanding of every English letter. Nunetics, the understanding of every Arabic letter, but in English, of course. Once you know those connections, as many of you are coming into, that's why you're sounding more and more intelligent. Every week we talk, and we're going to open up the call in just a moment in the webinar. But I need for you to get this because these are important concepts. Once you understand that, you'll see they're essentially the same word. Now look at this explanation here from the Online Etymology Dictionary. In Old English, the word den, D-E-N-N, means a wild animal's lair, a hollow place in the earth used by an animal for concealment, shelter, and security. All right, let's go past all of this to Proto-Germanic dungeon. You can see where the word dungeon comes from when you look at that, right? But you come all the way over here. Look, lowland. See, everything that's being talked about is talking about a hollow place in the earth, low down. Over here, it says lowland. Over here, it says valley. You see what the D and the N together are representing? And in the old Frisian, this word den means down. How many times have I told you that DEEN itself means down because it represents the 4 foundational points that we need to set down in order to build the social life up. This is the foundation. And look, in the old High German, denni becomes tenni. You see that? And tenni, ten, it means threshing floor, meaning the floor that they used to stomp their barley on in order to break it up. Huh? The low ground. See, dan, low ground. If dan means low ground, how come ding doesn't mean something low to the ground? How come DEEN doesn't mean your foundational life? If dan and all of these other words with DNTN represent those things that are on the floor, those things that are foundational, those things that are hollowed out in the earth. I'm trying to show you all of these connections in the logic so that you'll have ammunition and not guesswork when people ask you questions. Let's move on. Now, the word Eden is actually from the Sumerian E-D-I-N, Eden. That's from the Sumerian language, from Sumeria. And it means home of God, G-O-D, small g, home of God. The Sumerian and the Akkadian languages are some of the proto-languages for Arabic, meaning Arabic actually springs out of the meanings inherent in these languages. So you need to know that. Arabic was the first language on earth. No, stop it, please. So people who don't study, they have emotional attachments to Arabic because the Quran is in Arabic, and they think it means something to say that Arabic was the first language on earth. Let me tell you something Imam Muhammad said, not about Arabic, but about first things. We've been talking about the black man is the original man, the owner, the maker, the cream of the planet Earth, the father of civilization, the God of the universe. And we're taking pride in the black man being the original man. Imam Muhammad said, first things are not always superior. In fact, he said, first things are usually inferior. Look at the infant. Now, they may be superior in their nature. They may treat you better than some adults, but you can't say that the infant has a decided advantage in the world as an infant. It has to grow into a superior positioning before we can say that's a superior life form. See? So because Arabic came out of Sumerian and Akkadian doesn't mean that those languages are necessarily superior to Arabic. If they were superior and more suitable, guess what? Allah would have used those languages. There obviously was some defect or some lesser quality in those languages for them not to have been the chosen language for the last revelation of all time. But what it also is saying is that the wisdom is not relegated to one particular language. You have the go-to language for the ultimate expression of God's word, Arabiya, yes, but not the only language for the expression, the general expression and elucidation and satisfactory understanding of what God is saying. You can get that from any translation. When you translate the Quran, you can only go wrong, but so far. Isn't that beautiful? You say, well, you know, in this particular person's translation, you know, he did it trying to disprove the Quran. Yes, but he could not find, unless he just outright lied about verses and what they meant and words and what they mean. If he was at least trying to stay true to even a literal translation, the majority of it would have still been useful to mankind. Check Arbery and these other translations. You'll see what I'm talking about. The Quran is too full of goodness and too full of wisdom for you to try to, you don't have that big an eraser to be able to erase the wisdom out of any translation. German, Portuguese, I don't care what you translate the Quran into, there's going to still be good stuff in that translation. Even if you try to corrupt the translation, you're going to still get good stuff. Because there are certain parts of the Quran that you can't, it's so plain and in your face. Muhkamat, fundamental good stuff. You can't get it wrong. When unless you're just a shaitan himself, you can't get it wrong. Let's move on. Now, when they say home of God, let's talk about that. They're not talking, these ancient people in these ancient languages are not necessarily talking about God as Muslims know God, the creator of all systems of knowledge, etc. That's not what they're talking about, a particular power and force that human beings can access. So Eden and the connection to it being the home of God, as the Sumerians and the Akkadians fashioned it, was referring to the highest, purest, and unconditioned level of human consciousness. Now let's explain this, because you don't find this on earth that much anymore. This is what they meant in using the term God, that there is within you a very high, refined, pure, and what is called the unconditioned level of consciousness. In psychology, They would call this the unconscious. The unconscious, that part of the mind that's connected directly to your instinctive urges. Your instincts, you don't have to train them. They're trained by God. That's what we mean by undifferentiated and unconditioned. The world is not training your instincts. The world can damper them down, but if you dust off the cobwebs of your instinctual, which is also called your intuitive mind, your intuitive grasp of things. But there has to be a clear conscience for that intuition to burst forth and service you in the way that God intended, God the Creator intended. So psychology, again, calls it the unconscious, whereas in these ancient languages and systems, they saw it as a high, pure, and unconditioned level of consciousness. Now, I'm going to show you where to find that in the Quran as a term. In the Quran, it's given to you in the term ulul albab, mistranslated as the men of understanding. Ulul albab. We're not going to stop there right now. I just wanted to give those of you who like to do that kind of research that heads up, that advantage actually. In scripture, this consciousness is called being naked in the garden. You've heard that in both the Bible and in the Quran, that Adam and his wife were naked in the garden. In the Bible, Genesis, Adam and Eve were walking in the garden naked. Now, that nakedness, it was not a literal nakedness. In the human being, this nakedness, quote unquote, is the ability to register thoughts first and foremost within the darkness of the intestines. Now, I'm going to explain that. I started this conversation last week. I'm going to follow it up tonight. In the human being, this naked state, this unconscious nature that we call your instinctive nature, the nature of your instinctive drives, your instinctive impulses is what we're discussing now. That nature in you that does not have to be taught anything. Does your hair have to be taught how to grow? Do your eyes have to be taught to blink? Do your nasal passages have to be taught and trained how to inhale and exhale? Does the heart need to be taught how to continue beating? Do you know that once the heart starts beating as an embryo, and then a fetus, and then a live born child, that all of the way through your entire life, your heart is beating and never missing a beat unless there's some corruption of the organ, unless they have to resuscitate it or something. Other than that, you don't have to pay conscious attention at all to summoning or disciplining your heart to continue. Boom, boom, boom. And when you speed up, you start jogging or running for the bus or whatever, your heart catches right up with you, right? And then it slows you down because your heart has the sense that your conscious brain doesn't always have. So your heart will speed up and make you tired to slow you down so that it can become reacquainted with its equilibrium. You see how that works? So let's talk about the process now. In the human being, we register thoughts in the dark. Allah says in the Quran that He created us in 3 wombs of darkness. You remember that language. 3 wombs of darkness. Now, the first darkness that will register thoughts upon it or into it is in your organ, the organ called the intestines. The intestines. otherwise known as your gut. Now, you've heard of gut reactions to things, and what they mean is instinctive reactions to things. But you're not realizing that your intestines make up the majority of your gut. Your intestines, your large intestine, small intestine. Oh my goodness. Your intestines are like an antenna that registers all kinds of frequencies, sound frequencies, food frequencies, even light frequencies are registered in the intestines. Science is just beginning to come into a recognition of this, especially those who are studying metaphysics and not just physics. And Imam Muhammad encouraged us very heavily to move into the area of metaphysical study. So the gut, that word, is how the English-speaking world got the name God. Again, T and D, interchangeable. Don't worry about the vowels, right? G-T, gut, G-D, God. So God, in effect, does not mean creator of all that exists. We use it that way and we understand it when we say it that way. Okay, and now until the human public becomes better enlightened, we use what they're used to because we don't think they'll make a mistake. If we put a big G and, we remove the old vowel and keep the D so that the word dog doesn't register in the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind will turn a word around for trying to find meaning, better meaning. So you put G-O-D, the subconscious mind will turn it around and say, oh, D-O-G. I don't know what G-O-D is because I've never met one, but I do know D-O-G. So the one he must be talking about is the dog when he talks about this creator. He's talking about the creator as a dog. You see the mistakes that you can run into subconsciously or psychically with that kind of language? Now, going back to this idea of the unconscious mind, the darkness of the unconscious mind. In W.D. Farrad's esotericism, and if you're not familiar with who W.D. Farrad is, he's the founder, the co-founder at least, of the original Nation of Islam under Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. W.D. Farad was his mentor, his teacher. And in his esoteric language, in his secretive or symbolic language, it was called the original black man. And you know, man means mind. Okay? We're still talking about that undifferentiated, unconditioned level of consciousness. W.D. Farad was not talking about your black melanated skin color when he called you the original black man. He was referring to Buddhist and other Eastern mystic type language when he used the term black. People who study on that level, they study as gurus and those kinds of people. This language is not foreign to them. When they read this, when they heard or read the teachings of Mr. Farad, they understood immediately this man is not talking about skin color. He used those people to effectuate a particular plan that he had, hoping that he could roll the ball down the middle of the bowling alley aisle and get a strike. Instead of just knocking down one or two, he wanted to knock down all 12. He wanted to knock down white racism. He wanted to knock down Western superior thinking. He just had a bunch of bowling pins that he was after. So he went straight down the middle. Let me give them a language that I know they don't understand because they're just up from slavery. They're still in Jim Crow, 1930, 1940. I know they're not going to care. They weren't taught this kind of religious perception. So I'm going to give them language that I know they're going to misconstrue as being literal, but I'm going to also put keys and clues in my esotericism that hopefully one day somebody in this group, and I'm going to even pick my own man for this from birth, call him after me, Wallace D. And just hope to the real God that I have put enough pointers and flashlights in the dark spaces for him to be able to find his way to cracking the codes of my esotericism. So he called it the original black man, meaning mind. Your gut is the den for your original consciousness. Don't you study in your den now? Isn't that the place where all of the family members have something to do and it's comfortable for you in the den? That's usually where your library is and where you ask people not to raise their voices because people may be studying or even resting in the den. Well, that's what your dean is supposed to be doing for you. It's supposed to be educating you. It's supposed to be bringing you back to your proper foundation, like the den in your house brings your family back to their social senses and sensitivities for each other. So his esotericism, original black man. And that original mind, that original consciousness that has not been affected by the world's view of things, that is your first mind. Mr. W.D. Farad, in my opinion, was attempting to bring the entire world of Islam back to their fitra-based senses. But he used esotericism. He used the wrong method. Imam W.D. Muhammad peeped it, and Imam Muhammad began to unravel the mysticism and introduce the correct method. He pointed us to the fitra of Allah, the system of natural patterns, signs in creation for the building up of the human intellect. Let's continue. So this first mind, and I told you in the Quran, it's given as ulul albab. That means the original heart. Ulul albab is from aul, which means original or first. El-lub, which means the heart as it is connected to the brain. How about that? L-U-B-B, lub. The word for heart is qalb. K-A-L-B. But lub, L-U-B-B, is the word that represents the connection between the heart and the brain. Do you know that when the blood of the body is purified through these chambers of the heart, after it goes throughout the entire body, comes back up against gravity into the heart and becomes purified, differentiated once again, and ready for the body's service? It first sends 85% of its fluid push up to the brain before the rest of the body can receive a drop. So look at how the body gives preferential treatment to the brain, the heart, and then the brain. Isn't that something? That's Allah's system of management. So that relationship between heart and brain, these two organs, between the heart and the brain, that relationship is called lub. And that's where they get the English word loop, L-O-O-P, loop. And lobe. You see the lobe, right? Lobe. See the earlobe? The heart also has what are called the lobes. So the original people of the original loop, meaning people who have reconciled the relationship between heart and brain. Some people are just brainy and they don't care anything about being sensitive to people. They just want to let people know what they know, how many degrees they have, how long they've been teaching, how long they've been, but they don't care anything about people's sensitivities. Some people are totally touchy-feely emotional people, and they don't do anything about contributing to the excellence of the intellect. That's not lub. Lub is when you can connect the two. When you can be a good teacher and be sensitive at the same time. Without being overly emotional. Without keeping all of the brain around the heart. Now share some of that blood, pardon me, the blood, not the brain. Share some of that blood with the other parts of the body, even the little fingertips that goes unnoticed. that will get arthritis if they're not serviced with blood. The fingernail still gets some blood in proportion. Doesn't get what the spleen is going to get or what the lungs and the kidneys are going to get in terms of blood, but they're going to get their share. That's fitra. Let's continue. So it is the manner in which infants respond to events in their environment and begins entirely as gut reaction. That's how human life begins. It begins on the level of gut reaction. How can the child, the baby or whatever, react to anything outside of gut reaction when it doesn't know anything? Essentially, it doesn't know it. It doesn't have any knowledge. The intellect is not built up. It hasn't been built up. So the only thing it has is the first reaction that God gave it, and that is gut reaction, instinctive reaction. That is until information begins to accumulate in the intellect, and then the intellect takes over as the primary leader in charge. Now, that information is what W.D. Farad called the colored. And by colored, he meant environmentally influenced man or mind. He called the white man the colored man. He called him the so-called white man. He said he is, in fact, the colored man. And he wasn't only talking about the European, although that was his primary subject and topic and target, because he was the one who was devastating the majority of the world with his colored mentality. So still, the European was erroneously referred to as the white man, when in fact it was talking about any system of knowledge that has been established, that has ventured off from real life, that has ventured off from what the Quran calls al-fitra, the natural world. So whatever ideologies, philosophies, it could have come out of India, could have come off of the continent of Africa, it could have come anywhere out of Europe or China or anywhere. If it is versed off because of man's interference in the logic of created things, the way Allah created things, and man adds something that's not natural based on his own proclivities. 10 people can call themselves Western leaders in Western psychology and have 10 almost totally different perspectives. What in the hell are they basing their perspectives on? It can't be the fitra. The fitra doesn't give those kind of multiple, complex, and arbitrary and then contradictory kinds of messages to the mind. No. So they had to be basing it on something that had been colored or influenced by their own opinions or by their own subjective intent. Let's move on. When nature, meaning the fitra herself, is teaching you, you are then under the influence of the objective sciences. See, the code words for those are blackness, black hole, black matter, space, etc. They're not always talking about physical science. They are talking in esoteric language that represents the yearning for their minds to come into a more objective perspective on science, meaning a perspective that would take their minds, their opinions out of it. Now, if you can discipline your mind in a way which strictly aligns it with Allah's fitra as its teacher, it is then that you can achieve a purity of the intellect that could be considered objective. And we'll get back to that idea in a minute. Let's move forward. It's going to get real good now. Information travels, and here is its line of travel. It travels from a thought, which creates an impulse. Important word, remember it. A thought, which is just in the atmosphere, just out there in the environment, It creates an impulse, which then registers in what's called the enteric nervous system. That's the fancy set of words for what we call the gut. The gut. Did you know that you had two nervous systems? Most of you did know that, but you need to know what it's called, okay? The one that is governing your gut, what's called the abdomen area, it's called enteric nervous system. See, these people cannot escape. The more you try to hide Quranic logic, the more evident it becomes, because you did a very good job at following and keeping to the trail of consonantal connections. They did a very good job at holding true to consonantal connections. So all Instructor Bilal has to do is look at the consonants. Now you see the word enter here in enteric. That means that it's being entered. Something, and we're talking about impulses now, that enter this particular level of your nervous system. Somebody's phone is open. Would you please mute yourself? You know who you are. Not you. Hold on. All right. If you caught yourself, that's good. All right. Very good. Okay. Now, I also told you that if you search the Quran for one of the words for female, because you know females are entered also, right? They're feminine principles. The word that you're going to find that corresponds with the English word enter is the Arabic word untha. U-N-T-H-A, untha, from the verb anatha. Anatha means to be soft like iron. And as we all know, iron is also magnetic. So the feminine principle draws things into itself. It allows things that have been given permission. It allows those things to enter. That's why she has to be much more conscious of how she is, how she looks, what she says, how she says it, than the male does. That's not male chauvinism, that's logic. The feminine voice is, generally speaking, more seductive. Everything about her. Allah created the male to stand up like a straight board, whereas the female has hypnotizing curves. Look at that S right there, and it bleeds. You see those curves? Yeah, that's why they use the snake to hypnotize you. They don't use a ruler or yardstick to hypnotize anybody. No, they use something that has a curve and a swerve to it, because that's a feminine principle. It allows the person doing the seducing to enter into your system, like the female allows entry into her system with her permission. So the enteric nervous system, by this logic, must be feminine. Got that? The gut must be feminine. It takes food into itself. It takes air into itself. It takes all of these different energies and frequencies into itself, and it has to figure out what to do with all of that stuff. So what does the gut do? An initial impulse is registered first and foremost on the gut, the enteric nervous system, on the untha in you, which then delivers it to the heart. See, some of us think that the first time we think about something that it first hits the heart. No, it first hits your first brain, as some scientists are calling it now, your gut. You get a gut reaction, but you don't feel it anymore. You know why? Because they have trained your gut to accept all kinds of false foods, all kinds of false living, all kinds of false signals. So the gut said, to hell with it all. You know, when you need me, call me. We could be saving ourselves from so much frustration. We could be saving ourselves from answering the telephone sometimes when we shouldn't, from going to that meeting when we know we shouldn't have went, or found out later that, man, if I had only followed my first thought. I don't know why I was thinking not to go, things were even getting in my way of going. And I put them aside 2 or 3 times just to get to this meeting. And then found out that I shouldn't have been there in the first place. That was your gut instinct telling you that. All right. So it hits your gut first, and then your gut delivers it to the heart, and then the heart from the heart to the brain. When it reaches the heart and the brain, it has now accessed the central nervous system, which is controlled by a straight up ruler kind of guy called your spine. So do you see the feminine, masculine principles working between the 2 nervous systems that Allah created? The enteric nervous system, which is an oval shape on the most part, that's feminine, circular, oval. And then the central nervous system, with the center of the body being the upright spine, that's a masculine principle. You see that? You see how that works? Isn't that beautiful? Working together. Now, the hidden one, called the jinn, whose name is given in the Quran as Iblis, represents a wayward impulse. Now we're getting into the psychology of what the Quran is attempting to establish for us in what I call the cosmic understanding of the Quran, not the historical understanding. There is no historical understanding of the Quran. If you're reading the Quran as a history book, you're lost from the beginning. You'll never find a way. You'll never come into true wisdom. If you're opening it up and seeing 1400 years ago, thus saith the Lord. If that's where you are, hey, man, get off the train and we'll catch you on the round trip back. Because you'll just be taking up a seat. The Quran is not that kind of book. The Quran is timeless. It's not a linear book of things that happened 5,000 years ago, 1,400 years ago. That's not what the Quran is. It's not a linear reading. It is not a 2-dimensional experience like the books that you read when you go to Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. The Quran is not that. So this idea of Iblis, I-B-L-E-E-S, represents a wayward impulse. Remember now, the impulse is the first thing that registers in your enteric nervous system or your gut. So if you are under the sway of Iblis's influences, it means that you have been hit in the gut. Ask a boxer what that's about. You've been hit in the... Do you know also that your gut contains about 85% of your body's immune system? So look at what else is being affected. So in the same way that you can disturb the body's immune system by feeding it all of the wrong foods to break that system down, by exposing the body to the wrong weather to the point where it contracts colds and flus and things that put extra taxation on the immune system. Well, think about immune as iman. You see those letters? Immune, iman. That's where they got it. So if Iblis is attacking the gut as an impulse, then it also means that whatever Iblis represents is out to first and foremost attack your iman system. Now look at the word Iblis with a concentration on the consonants B, L, S. And then look at the word impulse, which is from the word pulse, with its P-L-S, Iblis, B-L-S, pulse, P-L-S. P, as you know, interchanges with B as a labial letter. So Iblis is consonantally connected to the word pulse and impulse. This is a beautiful explanation. So stop reading about Iblis and thinking it's some fire creature waiting to get into your bathroom, waiting to jump into your desires and make you do naughty stuff. Stop thinking on that kindergarten level and understand what Allah is saying to you cosmically. He wants you to understand your cosmic self, your cosmic reality, meaning how you are related to the rest of the daggone universe. That's what the Quran is teaching you. Not just how you're related to black people, brown people. That's not what the Quran is here to teach you. It's not even here to just teach you how to relate to other humans. The Quran is here to put you in sync and into lockstep with every living thing in the universe and teach you how to respect it on the level that it deserves. But it all goes back to how things are registered first and foremost as an impulse in your gut. You see, that's what you have to guard. You have to guard your gut. All right. So this issue occurs due to corrupt signals coming in from the environment. See, these impulses come in as thoughts. And if you have a wayward thought that has no substantive connection to anything real, you just picked up a frequency from somewhere. And that frequency registers in your gut. But it's a wayward frequency. It's going to create a wayward impulse. That's who Iblis is. He's a wayward, non-logical, thinking he's logical influence and impulse in you. These corrupt signals create false perceptions. Look at the word false. You see F, it interchanges with B and with P as a labial. So the word false, the word Iblis, and the word pulse or impulse are all related. Do you know what Iblis means in its verbal root? Balasa. It means he gave up hope. It means that at the end of his career, he had to give it up and admit, as Allah says he does in the Quran, that I lost. I have no more time left. I only call them Allah. I only call them. I didn't make those chumps do nothing. But it means that he gave up hope. What is an impulse? It's a beat that begins in you that will one day have to give itself up, right? You will not live forever. Iblis' scheme will not live forever. Falsehood will not live forever. Allah said it was doomed to die and dissipate and disappear. Falsehood. Batil. Follow the logic. Let's continue. Pardon me for going a little bit over time. This is good food. Now, let's talk about what's called objective reality. Objective reality feeds the mind these unconscious thoughts. Objective means God created it. That's all we're saying. Objective means it's fitra-based. You didn't have any input into what the clouds are, or what the rain does, or how the air blows, or the temperature. You, as a human being, you are not the creator of those things. Therefore, they are not under your subjective sway. They are Allah's objective reality. And that objective reality, aka fitra, feeds the mind unconscious thoughts and impulses through its instincts. That's what's feeding your instincts. Objective reality. As Allah created you, that's what makes the baby know how to suck from the breast. That's what makes the heart beat and continue to beat until Allah says, all done. When unconscious instincts intermingle with the subconscious memories and emotions of subjective truth, they become synced. Now, what does that mean? Objective reality is operating you as instincts. First lesson. Subjective truth is operating you in you as your memories and your emotionality. Now, your memory can be influenced and your emotionality can be influenced because they are both based on subjective. truth. The key is to get your objective reality to marry your subjective truth so that it can protect your subjective truth. How do you do that? You have to train your subjective mind to be in obedience and to be in listening mode when it is being spoken to by objective reality. In other words, when your instincts are speaking, you have to train your emotionality to be disciplined enough to listen to your instincts. You have to learn to shut off the noise and shut out the chatter that is in your mind, even when the noise and the environment has ceased to be. Some people call it the state of meditation. You call it what you want. You have to learn how to sit still for at least 15 minutes every day, 2 and 3 times a day, and take your mind off of the world and put it on Allah and His word. Don't try to make your mind blank. You don't want a blank mind like they teach you to do in meditation. Well, I just think on nothing. No, the mind was created to think on many things. But you have to think on the correct thing. The Quran calls it al-dhikr. That's what it calls the Quran. Portions of the Quran are called al-dhikr. Al-dhikr. They call it the remembrance. Remember means to bring the members back. Remember what you were when you were a child. Remember how you operated in your fitrah. Remember what you were, how successful you were when you were following your gut reactions to things. Yeah, you have to remember all of that and then inculcate that all over again into your daily exploits. You have to marry the objective impulses with the subjective truth, or what you believe to be the truth. It's not always the reality because it's the truth to you. But you have to get them to sync up, link up, and to marry. The challenge is to have them reflected by the disciplining of the conscious mind without any extraneous interference. Big words, I know. I'm not trying to show off. I'm trying to teach you something. And when you go back into your replay, you'll understand it. Just listen to it over and over again. Write it out if you have to. I'm going to send you the notes. You'll have it. I repeat, the challenge is to have both of these things, the objective reality married to the subjective truth in you, have them both be reflected by the disciplining of your conscious brain. This neocortex guy right here, the king on top, the one that the Bible calls the sleeping atom. You have to wake that atom up and say, you got to get back on your job. What is your job? To keep your instinctive mind protecting your subjective or your emotional or your memory-oriented mind. That's your job. And you have to do it. And when you determine or detect an interference coming into that, say, man, I know that makes sense, but daggone it, she's fine. Well, I know adultery is wrong, but she's tighten up her fingers every time that sister walks by. My goodness. James Brown said it once. He said, goodness sakes, look at them cakes. And you just snap. You lose it. What are you losing? Your grasp on what Allah said is right and wrong. The nafs, as to its wrongs and its rights, Allah He clocked it in you. So you have to make them marry by disciplining the two. When you get that thought, no. In fact, the process in the Quran, which outlines how a husband is supposed to discipline the wife when her actions become wayward, it's not just talking about a physical male-female couple. It's talking about this same process that I'm describing right now as it operates in the psychology of the individual. The objective reality is the male. The subjective truth is the female. When she gets out of line with the objective reality and the objective reality tries to argue with her to bring her back to good sense, to fit to a balance, and she doesn't listen, then Allah says, refuse to share the bed. After you done argued, brought her the case, so you know this is wrong. And you keep your mind, your emotions keep saying, well, you know, I'm not going to get in trouble. I don't even want to touch. I just want to see. Allah says, refuse to share the bed. That means stop making nice with your subjective views. Say, well, I know Allah is not with what I'm saying. There's clear evidence against me. I'm just weak. See, but if you begin to say, Allah doesn't mind, He knows I'm a man, you know, but He knows He created me fine and what I'm like. Allah knew I was going to be fine, and these brothers going. Yeah, you start letting that subjective mind disobey the objective reality. And Allah says, refuse to share the bed. Now, if that doesn't work, then Allah says, idribuhunna, adribuhunna. Strike them, beat them. What are you beating? You're beating the hell out of that subjective lie. You're coming with more force against what you know is incorrect in you, not in her, in you. This is all happening in you, all three of these processes. And it really means to travel away, to swim away, to get away, fly away, do whatever you have to do. Get the hell out of that mindset. And I can prove that to you linguistically, but we don't have time tonight. There's going to be a whole course during the 5th semester on beating the women, so-called. All right. Now, I don't have time to go through this. There's something more important I want to get to, so we're going to skip this. It'll be in the notes, or I'll have it as a part 4, because it's very important to understand also. So let's go past that. Goodies, goodies, goodies. Imam Muhammad used to do this. He just couldn't get to all of his notes. Now, back to the Bible, as I promised. The spiritual masters who wrote the Bible did so in codes, C-O-D-E-S. The words codify, C-O-D-I-F-Y, and the Arabic word kitab, K-I-T-A-B, are consonantally connected, as you can see. The C in codify is pronounced as a K. It corresponds with the K in kitab. The D in codify corresponds with the T in kitab, and the F as a labial in the word codify corresponds perfectly with the labial B in kitab. Therefore, linguistically and consonantally speaking, codify, which gives you the smaller word code, is synonymous with kitab. So when Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, this is the book, as they call it, the book. There is no doubt in it. What it is also saying is this is the coded message. This is the codified message. This is the message that you can't just look at one time and think that you got it. You have to study it, because I have built into it, Allah speaking, I have built into it a system of coded letters and words and language. Regular intellectuals were never meant to understand the true messages of ancient scriptures. This is why the ancient people who established these major religions, especially Catholicism, they did their best to keep it out of the hands of the masses. They put it in languages that the common people did not speak, such as Latin. As a regular person, you couldn't read the Bible. You had to wait until Sunday or Saturday or whenever your church day was for the preacher, the priest, the bishop, and those folks to tell you what God was saying. You couldn't talk with God, to God, at God yourself. But the interesting thing is that those who fancied themselves as the guardians of that language, of that esotericism, the true meanings were even locked away from them by the original writers of those scriptures, because they knew what kind of bastards they were going to be once they got a hold of the wisdom. So regular intellectuals that were the ruling class of those days and time, and still in this day and time, they were never ever meant to understand the true messages of ancient scriptures. The coded language of its guardians, meaning the ones who actually established it, were inspired to write it down and to procure it and secure it. Those guardians, they intentionally designed the language to mislead these ruling classes of intellectuals. They did it on purpose. They locked it into mythological language, borrowing from the Greeks and other mythology writers, and they locked up scriptural language so that the rulers couldn't get, not so that the common people wouldn't get it, they did it so that the rulers couldn't get it. The intellectuals were considered to be the ones who were both running and ruining the world with their wayward, fabricated, pseudoscientific logic. And therefore, the true meanings of ancient scriptures were kept hidden from them. Remember Amun, Ra, Amun from ancient Egypt? Hidden from Ra, the eye, the view. The keys to understanding scripture were meant only for those who could unlock the codes that came to be called seals in the Bible. Check in Revelations. They came to be called 7 seals. Those codes were layered throughout scripture under the code number 7. And this is why the Qur'an had to come and begin laying down the 7s. The Qur'an is also coded, it's kitab, but it's available to not only those who seek to protect the divine wisdom from the misuse and the abuse of it, but it is for any whose hearts have not been poisoned by the selfish desire to hoard the knowledge. See? So there are people among us who deem themselves to be protectors of the Qur'an also, but you don't have to protect it like those previous scriptures needed protection. The ultimate unraveling of the codes are layered in the 7 ayat of Al-Fatiha. See, the 7 seals of revelation that the Prophet was told to put on the book. The keys to those codes were given in the 7 ayat of the opening surah called Al-Fatiha, the opener. And Allah himself puts a guarantee of protection on the Quran. That had not been done for any previous scripture. For the evil class, the Quran sends them into the wrong direction. But for the muttaqeen, the possessors of taqwa, the possessors of regardfulness for God, it guides them into the straight and clear direction. And Allah tells us in this ayah of the Quran, I'll read just the English. Allah disdains not to use the similitude of things, lowest as well as highest. It means that disdain means that he does not hesitate to use the similarities of things, whether those things be low like the gnat. Do you know that Allah will use dung to make his point? And if he can use dung, I know he can use the Negro to make a point. He doesn't only use high and lofty ideas because he's God. You know, I can't use anything that might be offensive. No, these things are not subjective in God's world. All of it is objective, and he uses it as he pleases to teach. And he's put lessons, ayat, in everything that he has created. Continuing the translation. Those who believe know that it is truth from their Lord, but those who reject faith say, what does Allah mean by this similitude? Why would he use this? By it, he causes many to stray. Listen carefully. And many he leads into the right path. Talking about the same book, the same guidance. Said, by it, he causes many to stray. By those similitudes Allah's drawing, people look at it and, this can't be real. There can't be no real God saying this about a fly. Talking about a fly can take something from me and I can't get it back. This is a book from the creator of all the heavens and the earth and all. And he's going to tell me about a dirty, nasty fly. Man, I'll snatch that fly, let him land on my piece of toast. I will snatch that fly, cut him open, and take back my little piece of toast. What is this, God? But Allah told that to man 1,400 years ago, before science knew about the sophisticated system of digestion that flies are created with, to the point where as soon as they get a morsel of anything in their mouths, it is dissolved. Doesn't even have to wait until they get to the belly of the fly. That thing is dissolved. You remember that movie, The Fly? Vincent, whoever his name was? Yeah, and then they made a modern version of it. And it showed you the man turning into a fly, and he would salivate on things, and they would just dissolve. The acids are so strong in a fly. So even if you snatched it and cut it open right away, you wouldn't get it back. Who knew that 1,400 years ago? Allah. That's why he can use anything he chooses, because he's put divine purpose and the planning into everything in the fitra. So by it, he causes many to stray, and many he leads into the right path, but he causes not to stray except those who forsake the path. See, people say, well, why would God intentionally use the Quran to make people go wrong, do wrong things? No, he's not making them do wrong. That's them making themselves do wrong, because he doesn't lead any astray except those who have a will to be what's called a fasiq. You see, el-fasiqeen, fasiq. That's where you get the English word forsake. I don't know if that's why Yusuf Ali used it, but it's a good guess if he didn't know consciously what he was doing. But fasiq, forsake. So you forsake the path, you need to be wayward and go on your own and figure it out on a lonely road, not the road where all of the benefits are. The Bible and the Quran warns us about the beast. You've always heard about that, especially in the Bible, book of Revelations, the beast, 666 and all of that, right? Quran talks about the beast also, but it doesn't give him a number. Beast is a code word for those driven by their materialistic appetites and wild animalistic urges. Most of the leaders of this world, along with the masses who follow them, are under the sway of these artificially induced and inflated appetites. The four rivers are also describing the human being's four brainwave states, which are appropriately called heads due to the fact that they are mental states. Yes, let me make a correction on something I said in the beginning pertaining to the Bible's four rivers. It says that the four rivers went out and became heads. They didn't go out from a head. Okay, that is how they begin. If I didn't say this correctly, I'm correcting it now. I may have been correct in the beginning, but if you review it and I said something different than this, then I was wrong and I'm correcting it. It says that the four rivers went out and became heads. Rivers don't do that. They go out, they become rivers and streams, but they don't become heads. All right. In this case, these four rivers are called heads due to the fact that they are mental states. These brain waves are electrical, and electricity moves in a winding serpentine manner. These moving energies are referred to in this instance as rivers. So when you read about the 4 rivers in the Bible, you're reading about 4 electrical brain wave states. You're not reading about rivers on planet Earth, geography or geographical locations on Earth. You're reading about a particular reality in your human brain's system. Now look at how the Quran updates this concept. The Bible says, now a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it parted and became 4 heads. So we just discussed that. That's in Genesis 2:10. The Quran says in, where are we? In the 47th Surah 15th ayah, here is a parable of the garden which the righteous are promised. In it are rivers of water incorruptible, rivers of milk of which the taste never changes, rivers of wine, a joy to those who drink, and rivers of honey, pure and clear. See, so the Quran gives you 4 rivers also, but it's giving you extra added bonuses for understanding the wisdom. The Bible gives you names that are, on the most part, unfigureoutable. I made that word up, unfigureoutable. Kisan and Gihon, and you gotta really do some homework if you're not a Greek or a Hebrew speaker to know what that is. But the Quran has given you language that if you investigate it and then look at the context that's being attached to it, water, not just water, but water incorruptible. And then go back and compare that with the first 4 that I gave you at the beginning of tonight's discourse, because it is also a clarification and improvement upon that logic. I'm talking now about the trade, the government, the education, and the culture. They are also represented in these 4 rivers, these 4 liquids. Oh, I'm telling you, goodness is on the rise. Yeah, if you drink too much wine, what happens to your head? If you get too much power, Mr. Politician, what happens to your head? Case closed. All right. Now the 4 brain waves are beta. I'm not going to go through the details. You'll have it, or we'll continue it next week, inshallah. Beta, alpha, delta, theta. We've spoken about this before, and I attached them to Arabic letters when I gave them to you, right? Then we attached this to ba or bait, this to alif, alpha, this to dal, delta, and this to tha or thal, theta. They have significance in terms of what those letters mean. So if you don't have my book called Lunetics that explains the breakdown of every Arabic letter, you need to get in touch with me. All right. Now, to conclude, oh, there's a lot here, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight. This is wonderful, but I'm going to save it because it needs to be done justice, especially this part that's breaking down the word instinct. So I'm going to leave that where it is, and I'm going to ask that if you have any, we're going to open up, let's open up for questions. And those of you who have any questions or comments pertaining to tonight's session, please let me know. If you are new, if anybody in the audience is here for the first time, I'd like to just get a quick shout out from you, and just to see basically how you enjoyed yourself tonight. If there are no new people and we're all old heads, as they say, then I'd like to hear from you also. But let's give the new people, if there are any, a chance to chime in, chime on, and let's give them their due. Right? Anybody in the audience who might be new? I'm looking down the list and I don't see anybody. Oh yeah, I do actually. There are some people that are sitting in the side. All you have to do is take your phone off of mute or take your computer off of mute and join us. Just let us know who you are. Give us a code name if you want to. And We truly enjoy you. If you're not wanting to do that, that's fine also. Sometimes the information is so new and maybe overwhelming that you don't know quite what to say about it. And that's understandable. So let's open it up to the regular group of folks. Give us your name, who you are, where you're calling from, and let's hear from you. Yeah. There we go.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Tell us who you is.
I'll be.
Nothing wrong with that. That's how we be. That's how we speak. All right.
This is the soldier who was seeking to acquire that which is hers.
Yeah. There you go.
This has been an enlightening. Oh my goodness! You know, brother instructor.
Yes, ma'am.
The 4 rivers, and I know that this can be something that everybody can look forward to by attending the following courses. What the significance is of the 4 rivers. And as we had discussed in previous courses, the number 4, it has tremendous significance. But the way I see it, and I may be incorrect, but each time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places that number 4 to something, each one has its distinct significance. Could you give us just a little hint as far as what the rivers, the significance of the 4 rivers may be?
Yeah, well, I kind of pointed it out to you in saying that I gave you the names that are given from the Bible's 4 rivers in the beginning. I don't know when you actually signed on, but that was in the beginning on the first page, I believe. So, and I also put a notice on the first page at the top that says that for anything that you are not familiar with, your job is to look it up. Now, this is not personal, but listen to what I'm saying.
No,
I want you to get used to consulting my sheikh. My sheikh, his name is Sheikh Google. Everybody has access to him. Sheikh,
yes, we do.
Google. Let me say that, and now let me say this to answer some of your question. We're dealing with these 4s now. We're dealing with the 4s that we outlined in the beginning as the 4 rivers in the Garden of Genesis. So study those names and the meanings that I attached to those names. I didn't attach them. They're actually the meanings of the names of those words. Then I want you to scroll down to the 4 rivers that we just mentioned that are in the Qur'an. Remember, the Qur'an is explaining what was left unexplained in previous scriptures, and not just the Bible, but the Bible is prominent in terms of its focus on 4 rivers. Okay. So when the Qur'an, if you can remember, anybody actually, what did the Qur'an say those 4 rivers represented as far as liquids go? Give them to me in order. What was the first river made of?
Water.
Yes, water. Yes. What was the second river made of?
Oil.
Milk.
Who said oil?
I said oil.
No. Milk. Yeah. They just gave it. Somebody just gave it, right? So we got water so far, then milk. What was the third liquid?
Honey.
I think honey was last. I can't remember.
No. Honey is in there, but it's not the third. Was I going that fast?
Milk.
No, we said milk.
No, we said milk was the second one.
Okay.
And it was hard to think of this one because you think it's haram.
Oh, wine.
Oh, wine. Yeah.
Wine.
That's right.
Then honey.
And then the honey.
Khamr. Right? That's the name. Khamr. And then what's the
honey.
You mentioned
then honey.
Honey, yes. Now give them to me in order, one person.
Okay, water, milk, wine, and honey.
Exactly. Those are the 4 rivers that the Qur'an discusses. So you have to begin to put your fitra brain to work and connect those 4 rivers. Okay, they're going to be speaking to all other prominent 4s in scriptural history. Listen at what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, that means you go back to the Bible's 4. You look at the 4 Hebrew and Greek words that are given for those rivers and what I put next to them as their meanings. And you begin to put your fitra brains to work to see how that first one corresponds with water, how that second one corresponds, and they don't have to be in order now. The Quran is giving them the order of priority. But and I want you to think about everything from even how those liquids are produced. Where do they come from? How prevalent are they? Is water everywhere? You might say, yeah. Then I'll ask you, is honey everywhere? You'll say, no. Ask yourself those kinds of questions. If water is everywhere, how much of the earth is water? Now you know, okay, 75% of the planet is water. So water is everywhere, but is milk everywhere? You're going to say, no. I'm going to ask you the question, where is milk from? Now you have to go to the cattle, right? So that's how you begin to outline your logic.
Yes.
And it'll bring you all the way. Now, the wine, where's that? Okay, that's coming from fermented fruits and grapes and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now you're talking about the effect. The effect. What effect does milk have on the system? What effect does wine have on the system? And Allah is giving you this river of wine as something halal.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that some stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And you might say, well, the scholars say that this khamr, it doesn't cause drunkenness. Okay. But I want you to find that in the Quran. Because right there, when he put rivers of wine, he could have put wine that causes no intoxication. Now, maybe he did put it somewhere else in the Quran. So you have to consult who? Sheikh who?
Sheikh Google.
Sheikh
And
Google.
see, the thing about it is, with the wine, it's the amount of consumption that makes it so. And you know,
that's
that's what Allah says,
that's
do all things in
exactly what you
moderation.
put in your essay.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what you put in your notes. That it's not a sip that's going to make you tip. There's a certain level of intoxication or intake that is required before you can become inebriated, right?
Right.
All right. So and it's the same thing. What are the pluses and minuses of each one? You know, if you're from most of the African world, milk is going to be you're going to be lactose intolerant. People around the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't drink with so much milk. I stopped drinking it on the most part because I'm lactose intolerant, my entire family, right? But you have some tribes in other parts of Africa who live off of milk and meat.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So understand the cosmic connections in the Quran because it's addressing universal, and 4 means universal, by the way. That's what the number 4 means. It means that it can be applied across the board universally. So now you have to go and ask Sheikh Google to give you some more 4s like northeast, west, and south. See what the differences are in those 4 directions or dimensions. That's how you have to begin operating. 4 provides the firmest foundation for anything that you're going to establish upon it, right? You have a 3-legged stool, okay, but you're more likely to tip over than if you had a 4-legged stool. Or a 3-legged table, nah, you know, you want a 4-legged table. So 4 means firm foundation. All right. So go with it like that. I want to hear your ideas. I want you guys to put it in email form, put it in essay form, put it in homework form, put it as a bunch of scribbly notes. I don't care how you put it. Just put it and get it to me if you want me to comment on it. This is not a mandatory homework for anybody. This is only for my courses now are only for people who choose to voluntarily think and who are not prodded and primed and promised and stuff from the teacher, some reward or, whatever, or, honorable mention. No, this is for your growth and development.
Alhamdulillah.
See, but if you get it right, especially, I want to share it with the group. That's natural. Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
All right. Any other questions?
Assalamu alaikum, man.
Alaikum
I guess
assalam.
quantum, like quantum physics.
Give us your name first. Give us your name.
Donford, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, this is Donford. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
I guess
assalam.
that's quantum and quantum physics and all that would contain the number 4.
Yes. And I know you know why. Tell us why. What is it about that word quantum that makes you know that?
I'm drawing a blank right now.
You guessed correctly. You said it had something to do with 4, right?
Yes.
There's something in the word quantum that gives it away. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The Q?
The qua. The qua. Anything with that QUA is going to eventually lead you to 4. Like a quarter is 1/4 of a dollar, right?
Yes.
A quart is 1/4 of a gallon, I think, or something like that. In any case, approaching it is going to give you a line or road back to the idea of 4, the Q.
Or babies, quadruplets.
That's what quadruplets.
Yeah.
That's right.
How about that, right? Okay, so yeah, so when you look up quantum, go into the online etymology dictionary and look up that word, and it'll give you everything you need to know about its connection to the concept of 4.
But is that a limiting thing? I remember you saying something, you're cosmic more than quantum. One of the speeches. Do you hear me?
I can, but I'm not understanding your question.
Okay. No, I remember one time somebody said something about quantum, one of the brothers, I think it was, and he said, no, I'm more cosmic than quantum. Quantum is limited to the 4.
Okay. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. So I'm going to leave it alone for now and think about it, and maybe answer it in the next class or answer it personally when I speak to you. Because I'm not, for me, this is not you. This is me not being able to piece together or make that connection. If anyone else is able to, feel free. Let me just excuse myself for 3 minutes. You can talk to each other while I'm gone, and I'll be right back, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I think that was when Brother Instructor said that he was speaking on the fact that Imam radiallahu anhu had said something about us being cosmic because we're beyond the 5th, we have the various dimensions, and he was discussing the 5th dimension and how some of us are in 3rd dimension, but are not growing into the 4th, into the 5th dimension of ourselves. I think that's when he was discussing, the relevance between us being cosmic and the limitations of the quantum situation, if I'm not mistaken.
Assalamu alaikum. Are the 4 directions from people in our class, or do we represent all 4 directions? Meaning I'm in the southeast. Habib, I know you're in the northeast. Sister Mahasan, is she on from California?
Amina's in the west.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And we have Brother McCall, Brother McCall is he's in. Brother Michael is in. Brother McCall is down there where you are. Brother Michael Hameen is down there near where you are, and brother. So which one? Brother Michael is out there. There's one in Orange County. There's somebody that I don't know. Is Kareem Hassan on the line? No, well, he did. He's North and Central.
Zaid, where are you
Yeah,
from?
Zaid, where are you?
Can he hear us?
Zaid, I'm from California.
Oh,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay, so you're in California too. Good.
what part of California? Northern, or are you near the fires?
I'm in Northern California, near the fire.
Oh, okay. You said where?
Near the fire.
Near the fire. That was asking.
Ooh, okay. Oh my goodness.
Not too far from. I'm not that close though.
Okay, alhamdulillah, because that's no joke out there, you know. Yeah, that is no joke. Inshallah, those who are missing will be found. Those who have expired and never pray for their souls and pray for those who are left behind to grieve. Because that's like I said, that is not an easy thing. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a way of showing people that it's okay to deal with our reality. You know, yeah. And inshallah, those who are not aware of that, they will be aware after seeing this and after experiencing this, because this has been serious. And plus, there's the rains that are coming, so that means that the conditions as far as mudslides are concerned may come into play. You know, so inshallah, we just keep on
the four directions as far as we are as a class, because there are certain things that are happening in each area of the country that have, they're talking about this has not happened before, et cetera, et cetera. And, we need to communicate with each other in terms of, I was asking, say, the Northeast, they were saying this is the coldest November or Thanksgiving week, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, in over 100 years, that's right.
Right. And then when I was asking Zaid, because, all right, out on the West Coast with those fires, so it was talking about they're expecting rain, but that rain is going to fall on earth that doesn't have any anchor to it because the fire burned up all the trees. So there's a lot of meaning to these natural fitra disasters. The fire, water, the mudslides. So you need to think about. I was out this morning looking at the rain, and I'm in Florida, and the rain was coming down in such a funny way. It would come down soft, that all of a sudden it started pouring, and then it stopped, and then, you saw the mist, and, rain in Florida is very, very strange. So,
especially if you have the heat,
Right. Alhamdulillah. We need to talk more among ourselves in reference to what Brother Instructor is teaching us, and, bring it together so that, the complete understanding and how it's affecting all of our lives.
And that way we can also, when we come together on our course gathering, it makes it so that our roundtable discussion has even more juice. You know, it has even more substance because we've really been not only pondering, but sharing what it is that we've pondered individually and come together, and we've grown from and with one another.
Right. It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you talk about picture being a natural pattern of things, so that means that everything that's happening around the planet is connected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so all praises to
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
This is Mayina. I'm in Augusta, Georgia.
Alhamdulillah.
The instructor was talking about the letter E and N,
Mm-hmm.
and the DEEN,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that DEEN is to be expressed in 4 fundamental areas: trade, government, education, and culture. And then we're talking about the different rivers, and trade was the river of water. And then you have to decide where those other rivers are going to be. Are they going to be government, education, or culture? I don't know if they come in that order or not, but this is where my head is when talking about what we're talking about. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
Okay, I'm back, and I was listening intently, and I really enjoyed the conversation you guys were having among each other. It tells me that you're really absorbing the information and that you're understanding what it is I'm asking you to actually study from the content. So, Baina especially, I thank you for that grasp. It's an interesting observation that I'm making, because I know that what I'm giving you all is not an easy type of thing to feast from. You know, normally people are not piling your plate this high. But what I'm understanding is that everything I'm putting on the plate can be preserved for later. So nothing is going to go to waste as long as you get the replays. And I'm depending on you revisiting replays, going over them, sharing them whenever they're made public, like today's. You can share it with whomever you choose to. And if you have each other's numbers or each other's email addresses, send each other some communication. Even if you're asking them a question, if you hear that someone has a better grasp of something that you're interested in than you do, and you can't always get to me, or at least have the time with me that you may want to, even though I do make myself available, and I try to give you as much time as time will allow, and it's usually you that has to hang up. Well, in most cases, not in all cases. Sometimes I'm rushing also. But I do like hearing from you, and I do like hearing from you, especially when you have these kinds of interesting, invigorating kinds of questions and conversations, because I don't benefit as much from you and your participation until you show me what you're learning. And I think everybody can understand that. I benefit more from you, and I'm more pleased and more honored by your presence when I know that you're doing all of the right things. There's some among you who do it through emails. You don't always talk on the class line live like now, but I hear from some of you a lot by email. You know, 3 a.m, you're still sending me emails, and that's fine. They're not waking me. Sometimes I'm just up, but they don't wake me up. I greet them in the morning when I get up, and I'm happy to see them. And you're sending me YouTube videos. I love those. And it's on the subject that we just got finished talking about. Here you go, Baina. And Man, there's just so many of you. Khadija, Habiba, you guys are very, very used to sending me videos on the subject matter. You know, Bilal Yassin Al-Amin, he sends me important articles, and a lot of what he sends me are contributions from his own intellect on a subject. And I love those. I share those with people. Ezekiel, he stepped into the plate, he jumped right into it and just started hitting them out the park, you know, with his participation. So continue what it is you're doing. Let me continue to hear from you. Thank you for all of the support, the financial support, the moral support, the support that you give in spreading this and telling other people about it, and having to deal with some of them thinking you're nuts.
It's okay.
All I ask you to do is give them the email address of the community professor. That's I'm the
You should just add to the plate.
Give them my address. Don't you deal with them and explain something, or when they say, I'm too busy for that. Well, listen, you don't mind if I pass an email address on to you, or pass your email address on to Instructor Bilal? He like to send something, you know? It's important also, learners, in my last message to you tonight, that you understand the importance of the 2 books that I just produced on the study notes that are available only by PDF. One is 444 pages. That one goes for $80. The second one that I just produced is the same level of discourse, but it's about half that. It's about 200 and something pages. And that one is going for $30. The reason why I'm letting these loose, is because if they are in your computer as a PDF, it means you can print it. See, there's a method to my madness. It means you can print it, but I know that most people who have not yet been introduced to this method are not going to sit down and read a 444-page book. But they'll read 10 pages if you print them up. You choose. Don't charge them anything, and now don't try to send me nothing for it. Take 10, 15, 20 pages from the study notes. You choose the pages. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be back to back. It can be anything you think is going to get their attention, as an imam, as a school teacher, as a housewife, no matter what. I'm teaching on all kinds of things in these notes. What am I not teaching on? You know? So you choose 10, 20, 50 pages, and then you print it up, staple it, and make a book out of it, or paper clip it, you know, whatever, and get it to your local imam and say, listen, you give it to him as an Eid again. I don't care how you get it to him. You know, say, happy birthday, imam. I thought you'd be interested in seeing this. And if he doesn't celebrate birthdays, that's fine. Ask him, does he celebrate knowledge? The birth of the intellect that imam wants to celebrate. The birth of our coming into true understanding of this DEEN. Does he celebrate that? And if he says yes, then say, I have the book for you. And give him those 10. That's simple. All right? Do yourselves a favor and do your instructor a favor. And that's going to help this grow in leaps and bounds. Nunetics and this whole idea of consonantal connections is about to really take off. It's about to really take off, and your fingerprint is going to be on it. All you have to do is stick in there. That's all. Just stick in there. And there's going to be a whole lot of room for growth. There's going to be a whole lot of room for whoever out there wants to become an instructor. And I don't mean an active instructor like I'm doing, where you have to be live on the air at, you know, midnight. Like, no, these days are going to be over in a minute, because I'm developing modules that anyone on the other side of this computer or telephone can control. I'm talking about pre-recorded, so you can't get it wrong modules, where you don't even have to say that much. All you have to do is facilitate any questions that might come through that they email to you or put across the website. You just have to get back to them in a timely fashion. But If you can teach Aleph through Jim, you're going to have your own teaching business if you stick with what I'm doing. If you can teach the last 4 letters of the Arabic alphabet, you're going to have a business if you stay with what I'm doing, because that's where I'm transitioning this whole teaching approach to be in another 2 months or so, surely before the year ends or as we go into the 2019 calendar year. So this is going to be, it's already serious business, but it's going to be super serious business not too long from now. So that's why it's important that you ask questions about things that you're not understanding. If I don't understand what you don't understand, then I can't help you. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. If you're ashamed to, your voice on whatever, then email me. I've left you no excuse for not really feeling comfortable with what you're learning.
Brother
And I gotta
Instructor,
tell you, I gotta point out again, Baina, because she's persistent.
That's good.
She's persistent to a fault, and she'll apologize for how much she thinks she's bothering me, and then she'll bother me some more. Because I let her know that I like it. I like being bothered by her. I love her brain. I love the way I don't always agree with everything she thinks or says or does or some of the stuff she sends me, I can't get through it. Some of it is thick.
Yeah, I still have an instructor. All praises are due to Allah. I wanted to, you were pointing out that you were stressing the letter E and N, and the letter Noon represents the life germ seed, and you were saying something. It was the word garden. I had looked that word up, and it said to entice or to deceive, but it also meant to lay out and to cultivate. And I forgot what you said your definition was for Eden. I think you said it was the home of God or something, or
Yeah.
home of the Creator. Well, I also looked that up, and it said that it was a delightful place, but a well-watered place, and it was a Hebrew word, also a word that meant pleasure or delight. And just when we were talking about with the letter E and N and the human intellect is how I'm looking at it. A place that needs to be cultivated. And then I'm going to try and figure out how all these 4 rivers fit into.
There you go. That's why I'm
that.
not giving you too much in terms of the connections. I want some of you guys to be able to figure that out and report back.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
But all praises are due to Allah. I'm just grateful that He has allowed me to be a part of this class.
Alhamdulillah, we're glad to have you. We're glad to have you. Thanks for your contribution every week and every day, actually, because you send me something new every day.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Could I just ask you about, is there an equivalent such as for the English letter V?
V like victory?
V like victory,
You mean a consonantal connection?
Well, yes, a letter in the Arabic alphabet.
Now, when you say an equivalent, do you mean, does it mean the same?
You know, when I'm going to the Arabic alphabet, all right, like my name is Beverly, B-E-V.
Yes.
And I can't.
I got it.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm doing
it. The closest will be F.
F, the F? Okay.
Yep, the closest will be the letter F.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. I'm sorry, hold on a second. Let me just make sure Beverly was finished with her question.
Right. Okay. I'm finished with that. There was something else, but I kind of forgot.
It's okay. You can always come back. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Go right ahead. Thank you. Who was next? Was it?
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Adib, right? Alaikum assalam.
Alhamdulillah. I wanted to not only I wanted to make known that since we live in an oppressive language environment, the things that we're learning here, and as we share with other people, it's like turning on the light in a bug infested kitchen. As soon as the light comes on, they're going away from it. In particular, I'm talking about they were talking about the fire in California, and they used a subliminal subductive statement that said human nature is greater than nature. They were going against the fitra. And then when I seen it, I said, human nature is greater than nature? That the genetic disposition is greater than the disposition of what the plan of God? I said, no. You can't let people get away with that. I mean, we have to constantly be on guard to decipher what's being subliminally put in our mind. You know, you say, oh, no, I know what they meant. They meant to say, no, you don't know what they meant. What they meant was what they said. So I just wanted us to be aware, because this is a brand new mode paradigm that we have now, that it's important for us and for me to make it clear what we're saying, and it didn't have the information, the dalil to back that up. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I wanted to give salutations to everyone, because I more than enjoy this. This is what I call Hall's Methalyptus for the mind.
And let me tell you something. That's Adib. That's Imam Adib Abdullah from Philadelphia, and this man is he's a one-man team over there, establishing nunetics in every khutbah, in every conversation. I mean,
Instructor Bilal, I have a question.
Very, very good at what he's doing.
In reference to the different brain frequencies, and understanding the different brain frequencies, characteristics, specific, to relate the brain frequencies to the different rivers. Are there characteristics specifically for different levels of brain activity that are unique to the different states of consciousness? Are those different rivers representative of our spiritual growth and development?
No, they're representative of different states of consciousness. When we get together on Tuesday, I'm going to show you how they are to be consciously regulated through breath, through the breath. That's that's the important part that I didn't get a chance to cover tonight. But once you get the second piece, you'll be good to go. Yeah, it's all regulated through the breath, and the Quran and the Bible speaks on the importance of Adam, or the man who was created and put in the garden, as being breathed into. The breath of life. He had the breath of life breathed into him. But the difference is something that I want to pay some time and attention to next week, because the Bible says something that the Quran has omitted. And that is that the Bible says that God breathed the breath of life into the nostrils of Adam, and he became a living soul. The Quran says that when I have breathed into him of my spirit, my ruh, right? Then he asked that all of the angels and the jinns bow down, make sajda. So The idea of breathing into the vessel, called the human vessel, is the same, but Allah doesn't mention nostril. See, so when you find Allah omitting something, he's making a correction, and very often he's pointing at Satan's scheme in language. See, so that's when you begin to investigate to the best of your ability or ask questions about what nostrils represent symbolically.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Some of that information was in the second book. I was skimming over it.
Yeah.
So when you said that, it elicited. I said, "Oh yeah, I didn't get in depth with it, but I'm looking forward for you to clarify that because."
Well, I'm going to give you this hint that's not in the book. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Language is connected, and a simple class in biology will allow you to know that the entire body is capable of breathing. What I call the pores. You can breathe through your pores. I remember the Imam Muhammad saying one time that you can tape up the body with masking tape or whatever, leave the nostrils exposed, and the person will still suffocate because of the inability to breathe through the pores. These are signs, right? They call us the poor. And they have been suffocating us to the point where we've lost the life of our intellectual vibrancy. They didn't come through the nostrils. The nostrils was not the focus. Nostril, listen to the word, Nostril, is from the word Gnostic. Who knows who the Gnostics are or were?
Were they some kind of monks or something?
You're very close. What did they believe? What is Gnosticism? Gnosticism. Gnosticism. Gn. But you don't pronounce the G. Gnostic. What do they believe?
Is it? I'm not sure. They don't. Is there something about not believing in God?
No.
I think they believe that he was not reachable, or you're not able to grasp the concept of what a creator was.
They believe in God.
Here's what you do when you come online with me. I told you last week how to access certain things that you need, including the etymology online dictionary.
Okay.
It's difficult to do it on your end. If you're online with me, you can't do it necessarily. But keep that in mind for the future.
Okay.
Again, consult, check, Google, and next week when you come back with what a Gnostic is, then we'll have that discussion. But I'll give you this small hint.
The material. It's a reference to the material world.
It's in reference to
creation.
how they believe knowledge is dispensed from God to man. Dave, come on, I know you know. I'm looking at you. I know you know. Come on, Zaid. Let me say this.
I think
Let me get this. Well, now here's the connection I want you to
I think it's intuitive.
There you go. Where's the connection with intuition in the body?
Mm-hmm.
The nose.
There you go. Now it's coming to you guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
No.
That's right. So Gnostic.
Isn't that a person who
Hold on.
believes in God, but
Hold on. We're already there. We're already there. Okay. It's a person who believes in God, yes, but they believe that God communicates directly with certain people intuitively, and that they don't have to go to a pope, they don't have to go to a priest, they don't have to go through any of the hierarchy to get guidance from God, because God speaks to them directly. Now you might say, well, that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, God can speak to any human being anytime. Yeah, that's true. But the Gnostics went wrong because they said only certain people had the Gnostic
Right.
gift. You see? So you still had to depend on a priesthood to get the information. It was just the Gnostic priesthood.
They formed that group
Assalamu alaikum.
of like priests.
Right. Alaikum assalam.
Gnosticism was a 2nd century heresy claiming that salvation could be gained through secret knowledge. Gnosticism is derived from the Greek word gnosis, meaning to know or to acknowledge, to knowledge, especially esoteric, mystical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Was that it? Was that it?
Sure, that's an answer.
Yeah,
And however, that definition is tainted.
Okay.
By people who favor standardized Christianity, such as Catholicism. I can tell in the emotion that's attached to it, not because you read any emotion into it, but the way it was written. When they say a 2nd century heresy, it's no more a heresy than standard Catholicism. That says that God is a man, you know. So you got.
Are we saying Gnostic or agnostic?
No. Agnostic means somebody who's not sure, somebody who doesn't know. Gnostic from gnosis, which means to know. So the KN in the word know, KNW, is the GN in Gnostic.
Okay.
And that's where you have to explain that letter A, like you were saying in Amin, that it means not.
That's right. That's right. Put the A on it, it means not. It negates, right? All right. So the point is that the intuitive urge in the intellect is real, and you can receive communication. We've been talking about that all the time, but it's not something that you can depend on, because most people don't know how to discipline the intellect enough to quiet it so that true intuitive grasp or frequencies can actually come through purely. We were discussing that today. When you go back and look at what we said today, you'll understand it better. I call it supra intuition so that it's not confused with the baby level of intuition. The baby level of intuition, you go wrong all day long. Supra intuition is when you quiet the noise, the chatter enough for the real connection, the real frequency that is always, remember now, you have an aura, you have a torus field, you have all of these frequencies of information surrounding you 24/7. You can't get away from it. You're born with it. You have your torus field while you're in the womb of your mother. You're born with it. The Quran gives it other names. You have to understand better what this nafs is, that the Quran keeps talking about, what this ruh is, that it said that it's deposited into your mother's belly. While you're in your mother's belly, your ruh is deposited, and it leaves you upon death. What is that? We're so busy trying to figure out what these eyelashes are and how to get them longer, what these lips are and how to get them redder, that we're not interested in the true human and what that is. And all kinds of indications of it is given to you in the Quran, but we don't spend time on those questions. We spend time on how many rak'at is in the Zuhr. Is it? No, brother, the hands don't do that, brother. The hands do this. We're so caught up in that the wisdom is totally, in fact, that's who was mentioning, people are not even interested in knowledge anymore. I'm talking about Muslims who are under W.D. Muhammad are not even interested in studying anymore anything new. You know what that tells me? That they weren't even studying him and what he said. Because if they were, they would be they'd be knocking your door down to find out when the next class is that we're giving. If they understood his emphasis on new knowledge, fresh, crisp, fitra-based concepts. Instead, they opted out for traditional Sunni explanations of religion. And therefore, they're missing out on all of this.
I guess we're bid'ah.
oil, gold. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what is interesting, instructor in class, is that Allah Sunnah is that he doesn't utilize the many for him moving the social life forward, progressing it, and even the challenges against the social life by social manipulators, they are not many in number, they are few. And in between, you have those that are influenced, that can be influenced by the more powerful influences or frequencies between those two small groups.
I'm in agreement with that. I would just add to it, Michael, that when we make this shift from becoming or from being passive learners to being active and activated learners, that's
Yes.
when the real difference is going to manifest in terms of what
I
we
see.
present,
I see the model.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I see the model in Imam Muhammad being aware of the operations of Allah in the support of the influence of truth, and being conscious of not allowing our, what do you call it, our persona to get in the way, that we put the truth out there in as clear a manner as we can, and with an awareness that Allah is, the one who manifests it in terms of what it's going to do in terms of influence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being consciously aware of the sunnah of Allah in terms of how, these operations that man has put his name on, like Newton's law, that's not fitra based, that's not sunnah of Allah, sunnah of Allah. The idea of supporting those laws and becoming aware and making others aware of Allah's operation, and rather than the Imam talked about that in terms of his speaking from scripture and not speaking from himself. The more powerful influence is the Quranic influence.
Indeed.
And Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him, he began a process of affecting the atmosphere, that the prince of the air, the shaitanic influences, being aware of Allah's operation in terms of misusing that the influential ability to condemn man, or to show that a man is not worthy of directing his life and coming into the position of cosmic man, directing as Khalifa the forward movement of the creation, or the cosmos itself, being in support of that.
Excellently put.
Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Brother Zay, I'm sorry, Brother Zay, were you finished? I didn't mean to cut across you.
No, that's all right.
Zay was just getting started.
Was complimenting what I was going to say. But I have a book here. It's called the Sesame Persian. I don't know if you can see this picture. You probably can't. But he has on top of this image, his head, it, instead of a turban, it looked like a vase.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that represents the vastness of their knowledge. But everything is very profound. His nose is very long and profound in the way it's shaped. And he has earrings on and big lobes on his ear. And he has hair his hair is in circles.
Mm-hmm.
And all this is like it's speaking to the type of society that they were. The empire of the Sassanines, these people of language that you had mentioned. And this is called the rise and fall of an empire, the Persian Empire.
Yeah, that's a very important read.
Mm-hmm.
A very important read for understanding what happened to quote unquote Islam,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it went into Persia, ancient Persia. That's when most of the alterations began to be put in place for taking it away from the fitra and putting it in the hands of the mullahs.
Mm-hmm.
That economic and political thing I keep telling you about, that's when the fabrications began to become inseminated into the language. That's when the Qur'an was being downplayed as the go-to source for the DEEN, and the words of scholars and the fabricated words of the Prophet were put in its place.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's when you had that alteration and altercation take place.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sahaba who were still living when in fact this process began while the Prophet was still alive. People think that these changes came about only after the Prophet passed and 250 years had passed and all of that, and the religion left Mecca to go into Medina, then to go into Persia, and that's when it started happening 2 centuries later. No, it was happening while the Prophet was living, but there was a better check on it. You understand? If the Quran has to give us verses that warn the people against changing the words of the Quran, they tear the book into shreds. Allah tells us that in the Quran. Do you think that was a prediction, or do you think Allah was speaking to something that was already being done?
Mm-hmm.
It was already being done. And the Prophet was given revelation to warn the people against those who were doing that. So some of the Sahaba tried to approach and even castigate those who were doing that, but they were outnumbered. Some of those good people that tried to stick to what the Prophet taught, they were outnumbered, and some of them were killed. The whole battle against the existing Hafiz. You know about that battle where there were just a few people left who had memorized the entire Quran, and all of a sudden, most of them were killed in battle? That was done by hypocrites among the companions of Muhammad the Prophet after he passed. They didn't want anybody who remembered the entire Quran, because they had already put a plot in place to replace the Quran with their authority.
Mm-hmm.
So what they couldn't get rid of, they just changed the complexities of the meanings. They said, no, it doesn't mean that. It means, and then they'd give you a meaning that they made up. They said, no, it means aqidah. And then now, all of a sudden, in our day and time, all of the Muslims are focused on something called aqidah, and that word is not even in the Quran. Where do we get all of these words that are not even in the Quran? Why does the Quran need extra Quranic words to explain it when Allah says that all of the details are in the book?
Did the thinking come about because of the Iblis pulse?
Say it again.
Did this thinking come about because of the Iblis pulse?
You're coming through with an echo, so I'm not understanding the last part of what you said.
I'm saying did this thinking come about
Uh-huh.
because of the Iblis pulse?
Because of the Iblis pulse, yeah. Yeah, because Iblis knows how to attack you in between pulses.
Mhm.
Yes.
You remember how you used to jump into double dutch?
Yes.
That's the same way Iblis jumps into your life.
Mhm.
He waits for the rope to fall down, and he sees an opening and he jumps in. Now we're speaking metaphorically, but that's exactly how the social schemers capture their audiences. They study the art of pulsation. That's right. And they create fabricated impulses. You know, and I saw this science experiment when I was in grade school, elementary school. They had a film in science class that was showing how they were comparing heartbeats, right? And they would show two frogs, and they would magnify the sound by whatever gadget of each of these two frogs' beats, and they were pretty much the equivalent of the other, but you know, no two sounds are going to be perfectly, you know, the same volume and that kind of thing. So the frog that had the stronger heartbeat, they would put both frogs and microphone their hearts, magnify the sound, and it would be not in sync when they would first come into that area, and it would be now, if this one had the stronger heartbeat, in less than a minute, the one that had the weaker heartbeat, his heartbeat fell into sync with the stronger heartbeat. Yeah. So that showed them that if you can put two similar things in an area and you just magnify the pulse of the beat, the one that has the weaker pulse has to succumb to the one that has the stronger pulse. They learned that, and they used that science in the club. That's why you walk into the club with your little regular human heartbeat, but they have the pulsating sound of the DJ's beat. And how many people have gone into clubs not liking a song and walking out ready to run to the nearest record store to buy that song because they heard it across these big speakers and it overcame their little heartbeat. So you in there, and then all of a sudden you tapping your foot to a song that you declared yesterday you couldn't stand. A song called The Heartbeat. You know, let's say, turn the beat around, you know, love to hear percussion. Yeah. And all of a sudden now you out on the dance floor. You can't help it because it overcame your frequency. So that's a
that seems to speak to this idea of synchronization.
Yes.
Where women in the same household or area, their menses synchronize based on the stronger influence.
Yes, or the stronger personality.
Yeah.
That's why it's important for media to continue to feed us these personalities that are stronger than our individual personalities. They make the average person look miserable because you don't have a life next to those characters on television and in the movies. You're not as exciting as these soap operas.
Right. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Orange is the new black. And so they encourage all kinds of changes in the lifestyle because they make that frequency, they turn up the volume, so to speak, on that frequency until it just drowns out your little regular normal person frequency. And then all of a sudden, normal is not good anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You gotta be crazy to just get some recognition now. So people come out with purple, pink hair and, you know, all kinds of crazy looks because now they're craving the attention that these characters in the movies and on television and on the stage, the musical stage, are getting.
Yeah, normal is not necessarily natural.
Exactly. So look at how far that takes you from your instinctive life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were talking about tonight. When they manipulate the thought that produces the pulse, right? Then the original pulse that the instinct is responding to is already being corrupted. So all the way along the way, the chain of events from instinct to the intestines, to the heart, to the brain, the whole road becomes decimated. So that by the time it gets to the brain, you're really whacked out. You swear you're right in your foolishness. These people swear that they are the most correct thing walking the planet Earth, and you can't tell them anything different because it feels so good instinctively, but their instincts were lied to. That's Iblis. The balisad, the palisad, the pulse. See? And that level separates you. Everything with a PLS or BLS is going to separate you. Pulses are separated. The police are separate from the common people in the community. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the list goes on and on. But that's what it's designed to do. When you figure out the consonantal values and the connections in the logic of these letters, you won't sleep at night.
Brother Instructor?
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple of more comments and we're through.
Assalamu alaikum. Just want to ask one question.
Well, let Beverly get hers in. She was in between.
Okay, I just want to say tonight I was in front of maybe about 50 people. I volunteer to help hand out groceries and turkeys to this woman who's a pastor. And I've been doing this maybe 4 or 5 years. And tonight, she's in a different place and not with the same group. And so she got up and she spoke, and I'm listening to her, and I said, oh, I hear something different. And she started talking about, this is for everybody, and it doesn't matter what religion you are or denomination. And she said, just as long as you have God. And she started talking, and she made a testimony about how God had saved her from so many different things and how she was brought up and so forth and so on. But, and she kept talking. And so she said, does anyone else have anything to say? And so, of course, I took that period of time, and I did not negate anything that she said, but I just backed it up in talking about, the God. And the main thing that came out of it, now, last year she was talking all of, Jesus and everything. Tonight, she spoke the word Jesus one time. And I know last year I got up and spoke also. But now this is what she said to the audience after I spoke. She said, Miss Murad really has strong nerves to come up and speak after me. But then she said, but you need to listen to her. This woman has a lot of wisdom, and
yes.
So what I'm saying is to counteract some of this that we're talking about with the television and the characters and everything else, we have got to speak out. We have to talk to whomever we can. Afterwards, she told me, she said, my youngest son is interested in Islam. To Allah. And, and it's so, I'm saying this to say that when we say goodness is on the rise, we have to battle by our words and our thoughts. So, that information travels, as you were saying, from our thought, but it comes out in words. And all of this study and things that we're doing has got to be put out there in one way or another. Talk to everybody. Indeed. Because we never know when they're receptive. Indeed. Or when what they're looking for. All praises be to Allah.
Yeah. And before Adib speaks, let me just say this to back up what you're saying. What I might have said behind her is say, yes, whoever believes in God.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have added this Quranic caveat, and the last day.
Oh. Right. Well, I did not say that.
Well, this is
a lot of other things, but I didn't say that.
This is for next time because it sounds simple, but it's powerful. I'm gonna show you.
I'll put that right in there.
Whoever takes Shahada and believes in the 5 pillars of Islam and does this, Allah doesn't put us through all of that. Allah says, whoever believes in God and the last day, meaning the day of answering to God. Everybody will say, I believe in God, until you say, do you believe you're accountable?
Right.
For your thoughts, for your actions. Then they start whistling a different tune, right? So the simple logic is, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe in the accountability day? The day when the great accountant is going to arrive and tally up all of your stuff. See, or are you using belief in God just as a cover?
Right.
So here's the prescription. Those who believe in God and the last day and are doers of good, no fear, nor shall they grieve. Okay, and that's the prescription for this so-called interfaith effort that we have. Those who are Jews, those who are Christians, and those who believe among us, and that's the prescription. There's no rituals and all of that other stuff and hocus pocus, and you have to say these magic words. None of that. That's not what the Quran advocates. All right, it's called the religion of Ibrahim, Millatu Ibrahimu Hanifa. So first check and balance should be to go back and see what made people Muslims in his day and time.
Right.
Where was his shahada? Where were all of those rituals that we have fallen so in love with that we've forgotten about the substance? We need to go back and reinvestigate. That's what returning to the fitra is all about. So Adib, let me hear from you.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. All I wanted was the name of the book that the brother talked about Persia.
Yeah, Zaid, give us the name of that again.
Okay, it's called Sasanian.
Spell it.
Persia. SASANIAN. And PRSIA. The Rise and Fall of an Empire.
Okay.
Y'all got it?
Yes.
Sasanian. That's the Sassanid Empire of ancient Persia that's being spoken of.
Yes.
That's where a lot of the problems began.
Shukran.
Afwan. Okay, so we need to wrap it up.
Now, I got one more thing. On the feminine principle.
Yeah.
Is the lioness the lioness? Is that a good example? The lioness that goes out and she does the work. where the lion he sit back and enjoy the feast.
He gets the lion's share. That's what they mean, the lion's share. She
Yeah.
does the work. And then he pushes and gets the lion's share.
Mhm.
Right.
Takes the choice parts and runs away with it.
Mhm. Well, the reason they call him Lion.
Yes, right.
So on that note,
Lion is lion, huh?
It's called a lion because of
He got a
his
big roar. He doing
attitude.
see, the lion is Leo.
Mhm.
that. Yes.
And in mythology and in mysticism and symbolism, he's represented in the sun,
Mhm.
S-U-N. The sun's brilliance is the lion's mane.
Right.
That's his mane.
Yeah.
And so if you remember a song called Lucky Old Sun, I know you do, Zaid, right?
The sun keeps rolling around heaven.
Yes.
Yeah, they think the sun is just being lazy.
Mm-mm.
Look at that lion, just lying around here.
Right.
Got it made. Look at the women out hunting, and he ain't even taking care of the cub. He's just laying there styling and profiling. That's what they think. That's what they think.
Ruled by the law. That's right.
But his
Is Michael Helene on the line?
hold on now. There's a method to his madness.
Attitude.
Muhammad told us about this years ago. He said the lion has a psychology that keeps him in charge.
That's right.
As
He's ruled by the heart.
as comparatively small an animal as he is, say, to the elephant that can stomp him and crush him, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lion will make a fitra megaphone in the earth. He'll dig and dig and dig, and then he'll stick his snout into the hole and then roar.
That's
And
right.
when he does that, it sounds like a dinosaur is on its way. So when they figure out that that sound came out of that guy,
Mm-hmm.
he gets all of the respect from even the biggest animals in the jungle, and it protects his herd. It protects his pride, as they call it. Protects all the kingdom of the lion. So he's performing a function that him just running around jumping on the back of a buffalo doesn't compare to. He's keeping the whole civilization of lions alive. Because when they see that particular species, they turn around. So it makes it easy for the woman lion to go out and hunt, because there goes that. That's the wife of that dude. It's all psychology.
So there's a social supported or nature supported social logic in the whole group. You know, as a group is speaking to us, and also the importance of the feminine principle and its value, in social life.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And it's proof that the capacity for many different tasks that we assign to gender, the capacity is actually in both genders. So we know that it's said about Muhammad the Prophet that he would sweep his floor. I'm sure if they had dishes washed in those days, he'd be the one washing dishes. You understand what I'm saying? He went out and shopped in the market. We usually assign that to a gender. We say the woman, that's women's work. Sweeping the floor, mopping. Yeah, that's not women's work. That's work, period.
Right.
The only true function of the male is the protection because of his size. And he still does that. But remember, I told you that before societies came into this over masculinization concept that put men in charge of damn near everything. There was a point when the majority of leadership in the world was based on the feminine principle, and the women ran the culture, the women ran the societies, and the men were just there to institute the laws that women would invent. We need this, we need to do that, we need to stop doing the other. This is best for the tribe, this is best for the village. And the men would say, okay, we're going to make sure everybody adheres to that. They were really there just backing up the women. And then the men decided, hey, listen, we're tired of eating grains and berries and the stuff that these women are gathering, right? We want to do like the lioness. We want to go out there and get a different kind of food. See, there was a time when humanity was mostly in a vegetarian sort of state of economy. They weren't out there. It's not easy to jump on the back of an animal and wrestle him down, and a woman can't do it. So when societies were female-based, they were mostly gardeners. You understand? This is why the Bible speaks about putting the man in the garden. You don't hear anything about Adam hitting an animal in the head and eating it and cooking the meat. That comes later in the Bible. Sacrificing of, the roasted calf and all. That's way later. But these are explaining to us the incremental changes that have taken place in the masculine and feminine principles of human society.
Bluetooth device is reading.
Pardon me?
No, that was my speaker cut off.
Okay. Yeah. So these are important developments in the social organization of human communities around the earth. These are important changes that have taken place, and the psychology of these changes are still embedded within the genetic framework of the human psyche. It's still there. So that's why I'm saying that if we begin to go back to at least a respect for the feminine principle, so many things would change in our lives. You don't have to make a whole lot of major changes. Make some of those minor changes, and the genetics will take care of the rest. Your genetic memory will kick in and do the rest, and it'll be comfortable. It won't even be a strain. But right now, we're going against the grain of even our instincts. And we're slowly destroying ourselves. We're slowly participating in our own elimination. And it's unnecessary. And our children are being born into an elimination, born to die.
You see in Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him, the modeling of the feminine principles in terms of where Allah says how he had a type of behavior that made him attractive, the covering of faults and, very accessible to the men and women, and very supportive of respect for the woman in society and establishing respect for the feminine principle as well as respect for women in a society that had lost respect, disconnected with respect for the female and the principle.
Yeah. And if you can imagine a man introducing that kind of shift into the psyche of people who were very adamant about their masculinity, like the ancient Arab was, still is.
Yeah.
You imagine the numbers of them that actually, under their breath, hated those changes.
Yeah.
Because remember now, the Quran was hitting them straight in the head. For what reason was I killed? I mean, the Quran was just choking the life out of the male masochist and the male machismo.
Yeah.
You understand? And there were many of those Arabs. Remember now, their pride was in their forefathers. Keep this in mind now. They were heavily masculine-oriented people. So some of them were just waiting for the prophet to die so that they could reinstitute their machismo.
Yes.
And
I took Imam Muhammad's following of Prophet Muhammad in a similar in a similar fashion. His awareness and his person, you know, a man that knew how to fight and how to represent his masculinity, but a softness about him that kind of drew you close to him, you know, both
Sure.
men and women, you know, because of the balance.
Yeah. And Allah tells you to do that. He instructed the prophet in that, and the prophet instructed the people in that. It said, be harsh against the unbelievers, but soft as milk among the believers. There goes that milk,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the rivers, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yes. Allahu Akbar.
All right. So we got to pull out of here. But it's almost 1 a.m. where I am. And I'm always anticipating another Tuesday when we can get together and share kind of knowledge. Someone trying to say something?
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Someone
Are
to
we
mention?
having another Thursday evening course this week?
Probably not. No, Thursday evening?
Oh, that's right. There's Gobble Gobble Day for
Yeah.
all those people.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. I thought about it Thursday morning, but I'm not going to do that to you either. It's going to call it Turkey Appreciation Day, you know.
I like to call it Family Gathering Day.
Eat everything except the turkey. See if you can stand it.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's a big history behind that we're not going to go into tonight. But enjoy yourselves with your families. That's the most important thing. Some folks have a day off or a couple of days off, you know. So it's a great chance to be around family members, especially who you don't get a chance to break bread with. So concentrate on that. And enjoy that. Enjoy that. Share the sessions with those people when they come to your house, or email it to them and then wait till they get to your house and say, hey, did you get a chance to watch that free class I sent you? Yeah, man, but that was 5 hours. Well, did you watch the first hour? I front loaded, you know. Did you watch the first hour? You know, and so it's a challenge, but share this first and foremost with the people you love, starting with your family members. Don't worry about them not being Muslims, not understanding the Quran. Don't worry about any of that. They don't understand the Bible. And I'm doing my best to bring them information about their own book to make them excited all over again about their religion. The value of the wisdom that's in the Bible. They're missing all of that. Whooping and hollering every Sunday in church and fainting and all that and throwing all of their money to the preacher and all of that. They're missing the real gems of their own book. Much more than the way they treat it. But, you know, that's for them to learn. We're still working on trying to encourage Muslims to appreciate the Quran more. All right. So I thank you once again.
Thank you.
And Bilal Yassin Alamin, is he still with us?
Brother Instructor?
Yeah, I'm asking for Bilal Yassin Alamin. Is he available?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Would you do us the honors of mentioning the few people who have transitioned, please? And then make a dua for them as we close.
Yes, sir. Imam Guys, who used to be the editor of what is now Muslim Journal, passed, and Dr. Suleiman Nayang passed also, I think, about a week ago. So we say, oh Allah, our brother and your servants come to you, leaving behind their deeds, their families, and their homes. Accept the best of their deeds. Give them a better family and a better home. expand their grave for them and provide a light in their grave. Do not let their grave be a trial for them beyond what they can bear. And do not let their death be a trial for us beyond what we can bear. Forgive their sins and admit them to paradise. Comfort and protect their families. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother and friend. And so we close out on that note by greeting you with the greetings of peace that obligate each and every one of us to keep the peace, study hard. Okay, I'm not going to include the notes in the package because we're going to continue this next week as a part 4 of the study notes. And there's too much more that needs to be covered that you won't understand unless I explain it. So I don't just want to send it out to you as a note. So be aware of that. And inshallah, we'll congregate again on this at this time next Tuesday. I greet all of you once again with those greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Subhanallah. Jazakallah khairan.